I opened my eyes under a sky that should have been dead. The last thing I remembered was the end of the world, black towers cracking like glass, oceans rising into the clouds, the 7 demon suns burning holes through the heavens. I stood alone on the final battlefield, my bones broken, my mana core shattered, and my name cursed by every kingdom that had ever begged me to save them. I was Arlen, the strongest mage who had ever lived. And I had failed. Demon Emperor had laughed as his shadow swallowed the last city. I still remembered his hand crushing my heart, not with strength, but with time itself. His final spell did not kill me like a sword or fire. It erased everything I had protected, then dragged me down into the darkness with it. So when I woke up hearing birds instead of screams, I thought hell was being weirdly polite. Then I looked down and saw my hands. Small hands. Soft hands. A child's hands. I was sitting in mud beside a broken wooden fence, wearing a patched shirt, with a copper training wand lying beside me. My body could not have been older than 12. My mana channels were thin, my muscles were weak, and my stomach was growling so loudly that it sounded like a goblin trying to escape my ribs. A boy nearby laughed. Arlen fell again. More laughter followed. 5 children in clean robes stood around me, pointing like I was some circus creature. One of them, a blonde boy named Grant, held his wand like he was already king of the world. Maybe he should quit the academy, Grant said. Even the practice dummy dodges better than him. I blinked. Grant. That name hit my memory like a hammer. I knew him, not as a child, as a painting in the Hall of Early Heroes, where rich nobles loved to hang portraits of their ancestors and pretend courage was hereditary. Grant had been called the Founder's Spear, the genius who helped build the first magical kingdom. Except right now, he was 12, smug, and throwing mud at my shoe. That was when I understood. I had not survived the apocalypse. I had been thrown 1,000 years into the past. Not into some heroic age of shining knights and wise sages. Into the muddy beginning of everything, into a time when magic theory was still half superstition. Spell circles were drawn wrong on purpose because nobody knew better, and a noble child with a shiny wand could be called a genius for making a candle flame wiggle. I should have panicked. Instead, I laughed. The children stopped. Grant frowned. What's funny? I wiped the mud from my cheek and looked at him. In my old life, I had bent stars into chains. I had rewritten dragon blood into ink. I had once turned an invading army into harmless snowflakes because I was too tired to fight them properly. And now a child with 3 sparks of mana was trying to bully me. I picked up the copper wand, felt its pathetic little mana vein, and smiled. Nothing, I said. I just remembered how small everything is. Grant's face twisted. Say that again. I stood, my legs shook because this body was weak, but my mind was not. The world saw a useless scholarship student who could not cast a stable light spell. What they did not see was that the air around us was packed with old mana, raw and unrefined, like an ocean before anyone had invented ships. In my era, mana was thin because centuries of wars had drained the leylands dry. Mages fought over scraps. We built spells like starving people counting crumbs. But here, mana was everywhere. I lifted the wand and aimed at the broken fence. The children stepped back, expecting another failure. I whispered the beginner fire spell, but I did not cast it the way their teachers taught it. Their version forced mana through the wand in a straight line, wasteful and ugly. I twisted mine into a spiral, folded the heat inward, then hooked it to the moisture in the fence posts. A tiny flame appeared. Grant laughed. That's it. Then the fence repaired itself. Wood fibers pulled together, splinters snapped back into place, mud dried and fell off. The broken rail rose, straightened, and locked into its posts as if time had coughed and decided to reverse politely. Everyone went silent. That spell should not have existed for another 800 years. I lowered the wand. Sorry, I missed. Grant stared at the fence. What did you do? Beginner fire spell. That was not fire. It warmed the wood's memory. He looked like I had slapped him with a dictionary. Before he could answer, the bell rang from the academy tower. The others hurried away, whispering. Grant backed up last, still trying to look superior, but his fingers tightened around his wand. Good. Fear was useful. I followed them toward the academy, and every step showed me how pathetic the past was. The walls were stone with no warding lattice. The towers were tall but magically hollow. The entrance gate had a detection spell so crude that a drunk slime could sneak through by wearing a hat. And this place, Grayvale Academy, was supposed to produce the founders of modern magic. In my old life, schoolchildren learned more advanced theory by age 7. Inside the classroom, our teacher, Rowan, stood before a blackboard covered in crooked runes. He was young, maybe 20, with tired eyes and ink stains on his sleeves. I remembered his statue too. Rowan the first Archmage, Rowan the lawgiver, Rowan the man who supposedly discovered the foundation of spell compression. Apparently, history had been generous. because the rune he was drawing was upside down. Today, Rowan said, we will discuss the 3 natural laws of mana. I nearly choked. 3. There were 94. Ava, a quiet girl with dark hair, glanced at me from the next desk. She was the only student who had not laughed when I fell outside. In my memory, Ava would become the Saint of Dawn, a healer so talented that churches fought wars over her relics. Right now, she was biting the end of her quill and trying not to look confused. Rowan tapped the board. Mana moves from greater pressure to lesser pressure. Mana resists shape. Mana cannot be stored in living tissue beyond natural capacity. I raised my hand. The room froze. Apparently, this Arlen never raised his hand unless he needed permission to faint. Rowan looked surprised. Yes. The 3rd law is wrong. Whispers exploded. Grant turned around with a grin. Here we go. Rowan's eyebrow twitched. Explain. Mana can be stored in living tissue. The problem is not capacity. It is rejection. You are forcing raw mana into channels that only accept patterned mana. That is why people get mana fever. You are feeding the body a language it cannot read. The room went dead quiet. Rowan stared at me for a long moment, then smiled the way adults smile when they think a child has said something cute and stupid. That is an interesting imagination, Arlen, but impossible. I wanted to tell him I had used patterned mana to keep myself alive for 3 days after my lungs were stolen by a void serpent, but that felt hard to explain in a classroom. So I picked up my quill and stabbed my finger. Ava gasped. A red bead of blood appeared. I pulled ambient mana from the room, filtered it through the copper ring on my desk, folded it into the rhythm of my heartbeat, then pushed it into the wound. The cut sealed. Not slowly. Instantly. Ava dropped her quill. Rowan stopped smiling. I lifted my healed finger, patterned mana. Grant shot to his feet. That's a trick. Yes, I said, that is what magic is. The class erupted. Rowan ordered everyone to be quiet, but his voice shook. He walked over, grabbed my hand, and inspected the finger. He found no burn marks, no illusion residue, no hidden charm. For a moment, his eyes looked hungry. That was dangerous. In my old life, hungry scholars caused more disasters than demons. Demons at least told you they wanted to destroy the world. Scholars wrote a grant proposal first. Rowan leaned close. Where did you learn that? I looked up at him and chose my lie carefully. I dreamed it. That was the first trick I used in the past. Never tell people the truth when a better mystery works harder. By sunset, the entire academy was talking about me. By dinner, half the teachers thought I was possessed. By nightfall, Grant had told everyone I used forbidden magic because rich children panic whenever talent appears without permission. I sat alone in the dorm attic, where scholarship students slept between storage crates and spiderwebs. My bed was a straw mat. My blanket smelled like dust and emotional damage. But I was smiling. I had something better than a palace. I had 1,000 years of future knowledge and a world too ignorant to stop me. First problem was my body. My soul was enormous, but my new mana core was a cracked little pebble. If I used even one serious spell, my organs would turn into soup, so I needed to grow stronger without attracting too much attention. Naturally, that meant doing something completely suspicious at midnight. I waited until the dorm went quiet, then slipped outside through a loose roof tile. The academy grounds were protected by a perimeter ward, but calling it protection was insulting to fences. I poked one rune with a twig, whispered a correction, and the whole barrier opened for me like a dog recognizing its owner. Beyond the school stood the old forest. In my era, this forest was gone, burned during the Third Goblin March, then paved over for a monorail station that always smelled like onions. But now the trees were ancient, huge, and filled with wild mana beasts. Perfect. I entered with a stolen kitchen knife, 3 copper coins, and the confidence of a man who had once punched a lick through a calendar. The first beast that found me was a horned rabbit the size of a wolf. It charged from the bushes, horn glowing with lightning. My body could not dodge properly, so I cheated. I dropped 1 copper coin, flicked it with my toe, and used a tiny magnetic spell to yank the rabbit's horn sideways. The beast missed me, smashed into a tree, and knocked itself unconscious. I patted its head. Thank you for your contribution. Then I used its lightning horn to carve a temporary mana array in the dirt. I placed the other coins at 3 points, set the kitchen knife in the center, and waited. The forest noticed. Wild mana flowed into the array, drawn by the metal. The spell I built was called a breath furnace. In the future, it was used by soldiers to recover mana during battle. Here, it was impossible because nobody had discovered circulation loops yet. For me, it was breakfast. I sat cross-legged and inhaled. Mana flooded into my lungs, but I filtered it through the rhythm I had shown in class. patterned mana, safe mana, useful mana. My core trembled, cracked, then repaired itself slightly stronger. Pain ripped through my chest. I grinned through it. Weak bodies complain the most before they become useful. At dawn, I had improved my mana capacity by almost 4%. That sounded small, but for a 12-year-old body, it was monstrous. With daily training, I could reach adult night-level mana in months. Unless someone killed me first. When I returned to the academy, Rowan was waiting at the gate. He looked tired, suspicious, and deeply curious, a terrible combination. "Arlen," he said, "where were you?" I looked at my muddy shoes, torn sleeve, and the unconscious horned rabbit floating behind me in a weak gravity bubble. "Walking." Rowan stared at the rabbit. The rabbit snored sparks. "Walkings," he repeated. "Yes, with us thunder hair." It followed me home. The rabbit twitched and blasted a nearby bush with lightning. Rowan rubbed his forehead. "Come with me." He took me to the faculty hall where 3 instructors waited. One looked angry, one looked frightened, one looked like she had already decided I was guilty and was just hoping the crime sounded interesting. They made me stand in the center of a chalk circle. "Demonstrate the healing trick," Rowan said. "No." The angry instructor slammed his palm on the table. "You will obey." I smiled, "Then pay me." All 3 stared. Rowan blinked. "Pay you." "You want my spell? Spells are property. Property has price." The angry instructor turned red. "You are a student. And you are an adult asking a child to bleed for free. That sounds worse." For a second I thought he might hit me, so I quietly loosened one of the chalk lines with my foot. The circle beneath me was supposed to suppress mana. It had 6 errors. I only needed 1. Rowan lifted a hand to stop the man. "What do you want?" "Access to the restricted library." "No." "Then I will sell the spell to the church." That was a bluff. Mostly. The church in this era still thought healing magic came from divine forgiveness and boiled herbs. If I showed them patterned mana healing, they would either worship me or lock me in a golden cage. Neither sounded relaxing. Rowan understood enough to go pale. "You would not." "I am 12. My judgment is famously terrible." Silence. Then Rowan laughed. Not loudly, just once, like he had been stabbed by surprise. "Fine," he said, 1 hour a day, under supervision. 3 hours, no supervision, and the angry one apologizes to the rabbit. The angry instructor looked ready to explode. Rowan closed his eyes. 2 hours, supervised from outside the door, no apology. I pretended to consider it. Deal. That was how I conquered my first kingdom. A library. Restricted library was a disappointment and a treasure at the same time. Most of the books were wrong. Some were so wrong they looped around into accidental genius. One scroll claimed lightning was just angry wind, which was ridiculous, but the diagram accidentally described static mana separation 3 centuries early. I copied everything useful, corrected what I could, and stole nothing except knowledge, ink, and one tiny crystal lens that was practically begging to be used. Ava found me there on the 3rd day. She stood in the doorway, holding a medical textbook to her chest. "Rowan said I could observe," she said softly. "Did he?" "No." I looked at her. She looked back, nervous but determined. Good, future Saint of Dawn had learned crime early. I waved her in, closed the door. Ava watched as I rewrote a healing circle in the margin of a dusty anatomy book. "You really dreamed all this?" she asked. "Sometimes nightmares are educational." That is not an answer. It was not supposed to be. She sat across from me. "Can you teach me the healing spell?" I paused. In my old life, Ava had saved millions. She had invented mass restoration magic during the Red Plague, but she had also died young, betrayed by the same church that praised her. If I taught her too much too fast, I might change history in ways I could not predict. Then again, history ended with everyone dead. Changing it was the point. "Why do you want it?" I asked. She gripped the book. "My brother is sick." There it was. The kind of reason that turns talent into obsession. What illness? Mana rot. I almost winced. In this era, mana rot was a death sentence. In my era, it was treated with 3 herbs, a stabilizing array, and a grumpy nurse yelling at you to stop absorbing cursed artifacts. "Bring me his symptoms tomorrow," I said. Ava's eyes widened. "You can help." "I can try, but you have to follow every instruction exactly." "I will. And if anyone asks, you learned nothing from me." She nodded quickly. That night I built my second impossible device, a memory needle. It was not an actual needle. It was a sliver of crystal lens wrapped in hair, copper dust, and a thread from my blanket. It could read the pattern of mana damage from written symptoms if the description was detailed enough. Was that normal? No. Was it safe? Also no. But it beat letting a child die, because doctors in this era thought mana rot could be cured by singing at soup. Next day, Ava brought 3 pages of notes. She had written everything: fever cycles, skin color, mana pulse, even the smell of the breath. Her handwriting shook near the end, but she did not cry. I respected that. I fed the notes into the memory needle. It glowed green, then black, then spat sparks onto my sleeve. Cursed mana infection. Not natural mana rot. Someone had poisoned her brother. I kept my face calm. He needs a cleansing array. Ava covered her mouth. Is it bad? Yes. Can you fix it? Yes. She almost collapsed in relief. I caught her shoulder, but whoever caused it may try again. Her relief vanished. That evening we left the academy through the same ward gap I had created. Ava led me to a poor district outside the town walls, where smoke hung low and children stared from alleys. Her home was a single room above a bakery. Her brother lay on a cot, sweating black mist. I felt the curse before I saw it. A parasite spell had latched onto his mana core, feeding slowly, primitive but nasty. The caster wanted him alive long enough to suffer. Ava stood beside me, trembling. Can you do it? I looked around. No tools, no purified silver, no proper circle ink. Just flour, oven ash, kitchen salt, and a dying boy. That was enough. I drew a circle on the floor with flour. I used ash for decay runes and salt for boundary lines. Then I placed my palm above the boy's chest and smiled. The curse twitched. It recognized me. Not this body, me. That should have been impossible. Before I could think, the black mist formed a tiny eye and stared straight at my soul. A voice whispered in my mind. Found you. The room went cold. My future knowledge slammed into place. This was not an ordinary curse. It carried a fragment of demon magic, something from the apocalypse, something that should not exist yet. The demon emperor's influence had followed me into the past. Ava whispered, Arlen. I forced my smile wider. Good news, the illness is stupid. Then I stabbed my own palm with the kitchen knife. Ava gasped, but I did not have time to comfort her. Blood hit the flower circle. My blood carried my soul pattern, and my soul pattern carried 1,000 years of hatred for demons. The curse lunged at the wound, thinking it had found a better meal. I let it enter. Pain exploded up my arm. Black veins crawled beneath my skin. The curse tried to bite into my core, but I had prepared a trap. I folded my mana into a mirror loop, made my weak little core look like a massive ancient dragon heart, then opened a false pathway. The curse rushed in and fell into a pocket of empty space I had tied to the salt line. I snapped my fingers. The flower circle ignited blue. The curse screamed without sound. Ava's brother arched off the bed, then collapsed as clean mana rushed through him. The black mist burned away, leaving only warm air and the smell of bread from downstairs. Ava stared at me like I had become something impossible. Is he alive? I said, while quietly crushing the remaining curse fragment inside my arm. My hand shook. Not from pain. From anger. The demon emperor was not waiting at the end of history anymore. Something connected to him was already moving in this era. Ava hugged her brother and cried silently. I turned toward the window. Across the street, a hooded figure stood in the rain, watching. Then the figure vanished. I did not chase. My body was too weak, and my mana was nearly empty, but I marked the raindrop that had fallen from their cloak with a tracking rune so small even I could barely feel it. Let them run. A clever hunter does not sprint after prey. He teaches the prey to carry a bell. Next morning, rumors exploded. Someone had seen blue fire in the poor district. Someone said Ava's brother had been cured. Someone said I had made a deal with a forest spirit, which was insulting because forest spirits usually negotiate worse than lawyers. Grant cornered me outside class with 2 noble boys behind him. I heard you went into town with Ava, he said. I kept walking. He stepped in front of me. People are saying you healed someone. People say many things. They say you used blood magic. I stopped. Blood magic was illegal in every era for good reasons and stupid reasons. Good reason, it could control bodies. Stupid reason, nobles hated any magic that poor people could cast without expensive crystals. Grant smirked. Maybe I should tell the headmaster. I looked at him carefully. In the future, Grant became a hero. but heroes do not start as heroes. Sometimes they start as insecure little tyrants with shiny shoes. I could crush him socially. I could reveal his cheating in wand drills. I could make his hair float for a month. Instead, I saw an opportunity. "Do it," I said. His smirk faded. "What?" "Tell the headmaster, say I used blood magic, demand a formal duel of proof." A crowd began to gather. Grant's pride trapped him immediately. "Fine, I will." "Good, if I win, you stop bothering Ava." His eyes narrowed. "And if I win?" I leaned close. "I will kneel and call you the greatest mage in Grayvale." Gasps. Grant's ego swallowed the bait hole. "Tomorrow," he said, "training hall." "Tomorrow," I agreed. As he walked away, Ava appeared beside me, pale. "Why would you do that?" "Because he thinks the duel is about pride." "What is it really about?" I smiled, advertising. Next day, the training hall was packed. Students, teachers, servants, even townspeople had gathered. Rowan stood near the wall, pretending he was there to supervise safety, and not because he desperately wanted to see what I would do next. The headmaster, Celia, sat on the raised platform. I remembered Celia from History 2, Queen of the First Circle, founder of the Mage Courts, a woman whose laws shaped magical civilization for centuries. Right now, she looked maybe 30, sharp-eyed and terrifying in a calm way. Good. An audience with power. Grant stood opposite me in polished dueling robes. I wore my patched academy uniform and held the same copper wand. The rules were simple: no lethal attacks, no outside artifacts, first to surrender or be unable to continue loses. Grant raised his wand, mana flaring bright. He had power, I had to admit that. For this era, he really was talented. His core was stable, his output high, his instincts aggressive. In a fair duel, my weak body would lose. So I had no intention of fighting fair. Celia lifted her hand. "Begin." Grant fired first. A spear of wind shot toward my chest. I stepped left before he finished casting. The spear missed. He fired again. I stepped right. Miss. Again. Miss. The crowd murmured. Grant shouted and unleashed 5 wind spears at once. I moved through them like I already knew where each would land, because I did. His casting rhythm was embarrassingly predictable. He clenched his left hand before every shot. His wand dipped half an inch before he increased power. His eyes always flicked toward the target point. To him, I looked fast. I was not fast. I was reading the future from bad habits. Grant got angry and switched spells. Fire burst from his wand in a wide arc. I could not dodge that, so I flicked my copper wand and cast a cooling mist beneath my own feet. Steam exploded, hiding me for half a breath. Half a breath was enough. I dropped 3 tiny chalk pebbles I had hidden under my sleeve. They rolled across the floor, landing at points I had memorized while pretending to stretch. Grant blasted the steam with wind. I stood there unharmed. He grinned. "You cannot keep dodging." "I know. Then surrender." "I was waiting for you to stand in the right spot." His grin vanished. The chalk pebbles flashed. I had not brought an outside artifact. I had brought chalk. The rules never said anything about being smarter. The floor beneath Grant became slippery as ice, not actual ice. That would require too much mana. I simply reduced friction in a perfect circle under his boots. Grant lunged forward and immediately flew sideways. The crowd burst into shocked laughter as he crashed onto his back. He scrambled up, humiliated. "You coward." "Correct." He fired lightning. That was dangerous. I raised my wand and pointed at the metal buckles on his own boots. The lightning curved. Grant screamed as his spell struck his feet and launched him into the air, not enough to injure him badly, just enough to make him spin like a rich little wheel. He landed face first. The laughter became chaos. Celia did not laugh. Her eyes followed every movement. "Good." Grant pushed himself up, bleeding from his nose. "I will end you." His mana surged wildly. Rowan stepped forward. "Grant, stop." Grant ignored him. A dense fireball formed at his wand tip. Too much power, unstable. If he released it, half the hall could burn. The crowd realized it too late. I sighed. "Children." I dashed forward. Everyone thought I was attacking him, but I was aiming at the fireball. I jammed my copper wand into the spell before it launched, hooked the unstable outer shell, and twisted the mana flow inward. The fireball collapsed into a marble-sized bead of white light. Then I plucked it from the air with 2 fingers. The hall went silent. I held the compressed fire between my fingers like a glowing pearl. "Lesson 1, I said, loud enough for everyone. Power without control is just a public safety problem. Then I flicked the bead upward. It burst against the ceiling in harmless golden sparks that rained down over the crowd. Grant dropped his wand. Celia stood. "Winner," she said, voice sharp, "Arlen." The hall erupted. Some cheered, some shouted accusations. Grant just stared at me, face pale, realizing for the first time that the weak boy he mocked had never been weak at all. But I was watching Celia. She descended from the platform and stopped before me. "That compression," she said, "who taught you?" "My dreams are very generous. Dreams do not understand counterflow stabilization. Mine are overachievers." For a moment I thought she might smile. She did not. "Come to my office after dinner." That sounded like an invitation. It felt like a summons to execution. Celia's office was at the top of the central tower. Unlike everyone else in this era, she had at least tried to ward her door properly. There were pressure runes, silence threads, and a curse detector hidden in the handle. I disabled two, improved one, and left the curse detector alone because it was trying its best. Celia sat behind a desk stacked with reports. Rowan stood beside the window. Ava was not there, Grant was not there. Good, this was serious. Celia gestured to a chair. "Sit." I said. She studied me. "You have displayed healing magic unknown to our physicians, compression magic beyond our theory, and tactical awareness no child should possess." "Thank you." That was not praise. It felt flexible. Rowan coughed into his hand. Celia leaned forward. "Are you a demon?" There it was. A simple question with terrible consequences. "No," I said. "Can you prove it?" "Yes." I reached into my pocket, took out a crumb of bread, and placed it on her desk. Celia stared. "Explain." "Demons cannot create, they corrupt. They can mimic, twist, devour, and reshape, but they cannot nourish life from nothing. Watch." I pushed a thread of mana into the crumb. It sprouted. Tiny green roots unfolded from baked bread. A ridiculous little wheat stem grew 2 inches tall from the crust. Rowan whispered, "Impossible." "It is still bread," I said. The grain memory remained. I woke it up. Celia touched the tiny sprout with one finger. For the first time I saw hunger in her eyes too, but hers was different from Rowan's, less scholar, more ruler. "You will teach me this," she said. "No." Rowan looked horrified. "Arlen." Celia's gaze sharpened. "No. You do not need this spell yet. If I teach it now, every noble house will start growing crops in vaults, the church will claim it violates divine order, and 3 merchant guilds will attempt to assassinate me before breakfast." Celia went still. I continued, "What you need is better warding. Your academy can be infiltrated by anyone with a damp sock and confidence." Rowan looked offended. "Our wards are among the finest in the kingdom." I pointed at the window. "There is a spy hanging under that ledge." Both adults turned. A tiny sound came from outside. Celia moved first, throwing open the window. A figure in dark cloth sprang from the ledge, but I had already marked the room's air pressure. I snapped my fingers, and the air around the spy thickened like syrup. The figure froze mid-leap, dangling outside the tower. Rowan stared. Celia looked back at me. I shrugged, damp sock, confidence. The captured spy carried no name, no symbol, and a poisoned tooth. Before Celia's guards could question them, the tooth cracked and black smoke poured from their mouth. "Demon curse." Again. I moved fast, too fast for my weak body. Pain tore through my legs as I crossed the room and pressed 2 fingers to the spy's forehead. The curse tried to erase their mind. I caught it halfway. Mind magic is disgusting work. Memories are not books on shelves. They are storms pretending to be rooms. I dove into the spy's fading thoughts and stole 3 images before the curse ate the rest. A black tower beneath the academy. A silver mask. A phrase carved in old demon script. The first gate opens under the false moon. Then the spy's mind went blank. I stepped back, breathing hard. Celia's voice was low. "What did you see?" I considered lying. But I needed allies, not many, just the right ones. "There is something under the academy," I said, "and someone is trying to open it." Rowan frowned. "There are old catacombs, but they were sealed decades ago." "Not sealed well." Celia stood. "Can you find this gate?" "Yes." "When?" I looked out the window. A pale moon hung over the academy, and beside it shimmered a faint halo caused by ice crystals in the upper air. A false moon. "Tonight," I said. That was how my school life became a dungeon raid. Celia wanted guards. I refused. Guards made noise, asked questions, and died dramatically in corridors. Rowan insisted on coming because curiosity had apparently eaten his survival instinct. Ava showed up because she had followed Rowan and was terrible at pretending she had not. So our brave expedition consisted of a future world-saving mage trapped in a child's body, a young archmage who did not know he was famous yet, a future saint carrying a medical bag, and the future queen of magical law holding a sword staff. I had worked with worse. The catacomb entrance was beneath the old chapel. The academy thought it led to storage tunnels. It actually led to prehuman ruins built before the First Kingdom, back when demons still whispered through cracks in reality. The door had 12 locks. Celia began pulling keys from her belt. I placed my palm on the stone and opened all 12 with a pulse. She stared at me. Keys are just metal apologies for bad design, I said. We descended. The air grew colder. The walls changed from brick to black stone. Runes glowed faintly, written in a dialect so old that even in my era only 3 people could read it, and 2 of them were dead because I killed them. Rowan raised his lantern. What language is that? Bad news. Ava stayed close to me. What does it say? I read the nearest line. Blood of dawn, bone of crown, key of the devoured star. Cheerful. It is a warning, I said. That sounds manageable, Rowan replied. It is warning us that we already arrived too late. The tunnel shook. Ahead, a red light bloomed. We ran. The passage opened into a massive underground chamber. A circular gate stood in the center, made of black stone ribs. Around it, robed cultists chanted in low voices. At their center stood a figure wearing a silver mask. The same mask from the spy's memory. Behind the gate, darkness moved like something alive. Celia lifted her staff, stopped them. Rowan began casting. I grabbed his sleeve, no direct attacks. Why? Because the gate wants mana. Too late. One cultist noticed us and shouted. Rowan panicked and fired a lightning bolt. The gate drank it instantly. The black ribs glowed brighter. Rowan went pale. Oh. Learning moment. Celia cursed and moved forward, but I stopped her too. The cultists turned toward us. There were too many for my current mana, at least 20. My body could handle maybe 6 spells before collapsing. So I used one. A tiny one. I flicked my wand at the ceiling. A pebble fell. That was all. The cultists laughed. Then the pebble hit the ground exactly where I wanted, breaking a chalk line hidden beneath dust. The ritual circle had been active for hours, gathering mana. I had noticed one flaw the moment we entered. Their left anchor rune was mirrored. If broken at the right second, it would not stop the ritual. It would make the ritual argue with itself. The red light flickered. The gate groaned. The cultists stopped laughing. The silver-masked figure snapped their head toward me. You, they hissed. I smiled, me. Gate's mana flow reversed. Instead of pulling energy from the cultists into the portal, it began pushing stored energy back out. Robes whipped. Candles exploded. The cultists screamed as their own ritual overloaded their spell circuits. Celia understood instantly. She swung her staff not at them but at the floor. A shockwave broke the outer circle. Rowan, recovering from embarrassment, used wind to knock cultists away from the gate. Ava ran to a collapsed cultist and checked their pulse. Even now, she tried to save enemies. That was why she would become dangerous in the best way. The silver mask raised one hand. The chamber froze. Not with ice, with command. My body locked in place. Celia stopped mid-stride. Rowan's spell died. Ava could not move. The masked figure walked toward me. You are not supposed to be here, they said. Their voice scraped against my soul. I forced mana into my tongue. People say that often. You broke the Emperor's ending. My blood went cold. They know. Not everything, but enough. Which Emperor? I asked, buying time. The mask tilted, the one who eats tomorrow. Behind them, the gate stabilized again. Something pressed against the other side. A claw, a hand, a memory. It did not matter. If it came through, everyone in the academy would die. The masked figure reached for my face. The past will reject you. I could not move. But my shadow could. Earlier, when we entered the chamber, I had angled my lantern so my shadow stretched across the ritual circle. Then I infused one thread of mana into it. Shadow magic in this era was considered evil nonsense. In my era, it was mostly geometry with attitude. My shadow rose behind the masked figure, holding the kitchen knife. It stabbed their foot. The paralysis broke. I lunged forward, grabbed the silver mask, and head-butted it with all the dignity of a desperate child. The mask cracked. The figure screamed. Celia moved at the same time, driving her staff through the figure's shoulder. Rowan cast a wind prison. Ava, seeing the gate flare, threw her medical bag into its center because she apparently trusted chaos now. The bag contained glass bottles, herbs, metal tools, and one crystal vial of purified water. I detonated the vial. Water became mist. Mist became a reflective field. The gate tried to open into darkness but instead saw itself from 12 directions. Portals hate paradoxes. The gate folded inward. The chamber imploded silently. For one horrible second, the darkness reached through and touched my chest. I saw the demon emperor's eye. Not fully awake, but aware. Then the gate shattered. Black stone rained across the chamber. The masked figure vanished in the blast, leaving only a cracked piece of silver behind. I collapsed to one knee, coughing blood. Ava rushed to me. "You are hurt." "Only in several important places." She pressed glowing hands to my back. Her healing was clumsy but strong, already better than most adult healers in this era. Celia stood over the broken gate, face grim. Rowan picked up the silver fragment with trembling fingers. What was that thing? I wiped blood from my mouth. A warning. Nobody slept that night. Morning, Celia locked down the academy and told the staff there had been a gas leak in the catacombs. This was impressive because nobody knew what gas was yet. She also moved me from the attic to a private room for security, which meant so I can watch you more easily. I did not mind. The bed had a mattress. Luxury changes a man. Next week became madness. Celia quietly gave me access to more books. Rowan hovered around me with questions until I started charging him answers by the minute. Ava trained with me every evening, learning how to pattern mana safely. Grant avoided me for 3 days, then challenged me to another duel in private. I expected pride. Instead, he bowed. Badly. I was wrong, he said. I stared at him. He looked like swallowing those words had almost killed him. Teach me. There are moments when history tries to correct itself. In the future, Grant became a warrior mage who stood against demon armies. Maybe he needed arrogance beaten out of him early. Maybe I could use him. Maybe I just wanted to see if a noble brat could become useful before puberty finished. Why? I asked. Because I hate losing. Bad reason. He clenched his jaw. Because if something like what happened in the hall happens again, I do not want to be the idiot who almost burns everyone. Better. I pointed to the training yard. Run 20 laps. What does that have to do with magic? Your body is the handle, mana is the blade, your handle is spoiled. His face turned red, but he ran. Ava watched from beside me. That was almost kind. Do not spread rumors. Training them became my third path to power. I could not fight every battle alone. My body was still weak and the demon emperor's servants were already moving. I needed pieces on the board, not followers, not friends, I told myself. Assets. That lie lasted almost 2 weeks. Ava absorbed healing theory like dry earth drinking rain. She stopped asking whether things were impossible and started asking what made them work. Grant complained constantly but obeyed every order. Rowan acted like a teacher in public and like a student in private, scribbling notes while I corrected centuries of magical stupidity. Celia watched us all, not interfering, not trusting, but preparing. Then the royal examiner arrived. He had no name worth remembering. That was a problem because people without names in history are either irrelevant or extremely good at hiding. He came with a golden carriage, 20 soldiers, and a smile that made me want to count my organs. He announced that the academy would host an official evaluation to identify dangerous irregularities among students. Everyone knew he meant me. Celia could not refuse. The crown funded the academy. The nobles wanted answers. The church had heard rumors. And somewhere behind all of that, the silver-masked enemy was nudging events. The evaluation had 3 trials. Mana purity, spell control, combat application. Grant was excited. Ava was nervous. Rowan looked like he might throw up in a scholarly way. Celia told me to be careful. So naturally, I decided to cheat before the trials even began. Examiner's testing crystal was an old model. In my era, that type was used in museums and prank shops. It measured mana purity by color brightness, which was ridiculous because cursed mana could shine beautifully if polished right. I snuck into the hall before dawn and placed a tiny correction rune under the crystal stand, not to fake my score. To expose everyone else. When the trial began, noble students lined up proudly. They placed hands on the crystal, and it glowed blue, green, gold. The examiner praised them. Then Grant touched it. The crystal flashed red for half a second before turning bright gold. I narrowed my eyes. Grant had been exposed to demon residue. He did not notice. The examiner did. Ava touched the crystal next. Pure white light filled the hall, warm and steady. The crowd gasped. Healing affinity of that level was rare even in my era. The examiner smiled too widely. Then came my turn. I placed my hand on the crystal. For one moment I considered hiding everything, showing average talent would be safer. But safety had a ceiling. I needed the crown, the church, the nobles, and the demons to know one thing. I was not prey. I pushed one thread of mana into the crystal. It went transparent. No glow, no color. Just clear. The hall murmured in confusion. The examiner frowned. The crystal failed. No, I said, it is embarrassed. The crystal cracked from top to bottom. Inside it, dozens of black threads appeared, writhing like worms, demon residue, hidden in the testing device, waiting to mark strong students. The hall exploded in panic. The examiner's smile vanished. Celia stood, explain that. He raised his hands. This is sabotage. Yes, I said, yours. His eyes snapped to me. I flicked my wand. The correction rune beneath the stand activated fully. Every person touched by the crystal now had their mana imprint projected above them in faint light. Most were clean. Grant had a tiny black hook near his core. The examiner had a whole nest. Soldiers drew swords. Celia's staff hit the floor and the room locked down. No one moves. The examiner laughed softly. Children should not look under stones. His skin split. Black smoke poured out. The soldiers screamed as their commander transformed into something tall, thin, and wrong. Not a full demon, a husk, a human hollowed out and filled with future darkness. The husk lunged at Ava first. Of course it did. It wanted the healer. Grant moved before I did. He threw himself between them and raised a fire shield. The husk tore through it, but the delay was enough. I slid under the creature's arm, slapped a chalk mark onto its ribs, and shouted, Grant, burn my mark. Grant did not question me. Good. Fire struck the chalk. The mark ignited, not outward but inward, carrying heat through the creature's demon channels. The husk shrieked and staggered. Ava cast a purification pulse, too wide, too emotional but powerful. The black smoke recoiled. Rowan trapped its legs with stone. Celia severed one arm with her sword staff. The husk still kept moving. Demon bodies cheat biology. I needed a finishing move my child body could survive. So I borrowed the enemy's strength. As the husk attacked again, I let its claw pierce my shoulder. Pain flashed white. Ava screamed my name. I grabbed the claw with both hands and cast a reversal seal directly into the wound. Demon mana flooded into me, toxic and violent. I filtered it through my pattern mana rhythm, spun it once around my core, then sent it back purified and sharpened. The husk tried to pull away. Too late. Its own power returned as a blade of white flame, burning from the inside out. The creature collapsed into ash, leaving the hall silent except for my dripping blood. I looked at Grant, good timing. He was shaking, you got stabbed. Also good timing. Ava shoved him aside and healed my shoulder while scolding me under her breath. Grant looked offended, then relieved, then confused about why he was relieved. Celia ordered the gates sealed. But the damage was done. The crown now knew I existed. The demons knew I was gathering allies. And Grant had a demon hook in his core. That night I told him. He reacted exactly as expected. That is impossible. I pointed at the black thread visible through a diagnostic circle around him. It is wiggling. Grant stared at it pale. Am I cursed? Yes. Can you remove it? Yes. He exhaled. But it will hurt. He swallowed. How much? I considered lying, then remembered he needed honesty more than comfort. A lot. Grant nodded slowly. Do it. Ava prepared healing supplies. Rowan reinforced the room. Celia stood guard outside. I drew a circle around Grant using silver dust stolen from the Academy trophy cabinet. Nobody liked that part, but the trophy was ugly anyway. Demon Hook had likely entered during the duel when Grant overcharged his fireball. The masked figure had planted the seed through the Academy wards, waiting for a prideful young mage to open himself with anger. Clever. Not clever enough. I placed my hand over Grant's core. When it starts, you will see things, I said. Lies, fears, maybe promises. Ignore all of them. Grant tried to smirk. I ignore people all the time. Perfect, be yourself. Then I pulled. The hook fought back. Grant screamed. Black veins crawled across his chest. Ava poured healing light into him, keeping his channels from tearing. Rowan held the outer circle steady. I dragged the hook inch by inch, but it had roots deeper than expected. Then the room changed. The curse pulled us into a shared illusion. We stood in a battlefield of ash. Grant was older, wearing golden armor, surrounded by cheering soldiers. A crown floated before him. A voice whispered, "You were born to rule." Grant reached for it. I slapped his hand. He glared, "What are you doing?" "Stopping you from touching the obvious evil crown. It looks noble. It is floating over a pile of bones." He hesitated. The illusion shifted. Now Ava stood dying at his feet, accusing him of weakness. Then Celia turned away. Rowan laughed. The academy burned. Grant trembled. The curse knew him well. It fed on pride because pride was fear wearing perfume. I stepped beside him. Listen carefully. Being great does not mean everyone claps. Sometimes it means doing the right thing while looking stupid. He looked at me. "You always look stupid. And yet I am winning." The crown cracked. Grant took a breath, then turned away from it. "I do not need that," he said. The illusion shattered. Back in the room, the hook ripped free from his core. I trapped it in a glass bead and crushed it under my heel. Grant collapsed, alive and clean. Ava wiped sweat from her face. Rowan sank into a chair. That was the most terrifying medical procedure I have ever seen. It was also illegal in 6 future jurisdictions, I muttered. "What?" "Nothing." Grant opened one eye. Did I pass? I looked at him. The arrogant boy who once mocked me had resisted a demon temptation most adults would have embraced. History was changing already. "Yes," I said, barely. He smiled and passed out. 2 days later, the capital summoned me. Technically, the summons went to Celia. The royal council demanded that she bring the irregular child for questioning. Refusing would turn the academy into a target. Accepting would put me in a nest of nobles, spies, priests, and probably demon puppets. So I chose the third option. I made the trip profitable. Road to the capital took 3 days by carriage. Celia, Rowan, Ava, Grant, and I traveled together with a small escort. I spent the ride turning cheap travel charms into listening devices and hiding them in our luggage. Grant practiced mana breathing until he stopped vomiting from the motion. Ava read healing notes. Rowan asked so many questions that Celia threatened to throw him out of the carriage. On the second night, bandits attacked. Of course they did. A dozen riders surrounded our camp, blades drawn, faces covered. They demanded valuables, horses, and hostages. Celia reached for her staff. I stopped her. "Let me." Grant grinned finally. "No, sit down." He looked betrayed. I walked into the firelight with my hands raised. The bandit leader laughed when he saw a child. "Where are the adults?" he asked. "Behind me, making poor choices." He pointed a sword at my throat. "Give us the gold." I looked at his boots, his saddle, the angle of his men, the trembling horse on the left, the hidden archer in the trees, and the faint black mark behind his ear. Not bandits. Controlled civilians. Demon influence again. I sighed. This is going to be annoying. He swung. I ducked, grabbed a burning stick from the campfire, and drew a circle in the air. Sparks hung in place. The bandits froze, not because I restrained them, but because every horse suddenly sat down. Not collapsed. Sat like obedient dogs. Riders tumbled into the dirt. Grant burst out laughing. The hidden archer fired. I flicked ash from the stick. The arrow turned into a rope mid-flight and tied itself around a tree. The bandit leader scrambled up, eyes blackening. I walked toward him. "Who sent you?" He snarled, "The gate beneath the crown." "Interesting." I tapped his forehead with the burning stick. The black mark tried to flee into his spine. I pinned it using heat, pulled it out through his ear as a thread of smoke, and trapped it in a soap bubble made from camp stew grease. Ava stared. "Did you just use stew?" "Multi-purpose cuisine." Once the marks were removed, the bandits woke confused and terrified. Celia questioned them. They remembered nothing after accepting food from a traveler with a silver ring. Silver again. The masked group was larger than I thought. That night while everyone slept, I studied the captured smoke bubble. Demon marks in this era were crude, but their instructions were advanced. Too advanced. Someone else had traveled back, or something from the future was sending knowledge upstream. The message inside the mark repeated one image. A palace. A gate beneath it. A crown made of bone. I crushed the bubble. Capital rose from the plains the next afternoon. All white walls, golden roofs, and banners snapping in the wind. It was smaller than the ruined megacity I remembered, but alive. People filled the streets. Merchants shouted. Children ran beside fountains. Mages in colorful robes strutted like peacocks with student loans. They had no idea their world had already been marked for harvest. The palace was worse. Every wall carried wards, some decent, most decorative. Nobles watched us enter like wolves deciding whether children counted as appetizers. In the council hall, 12 officials sat in a crescent. The king was absent, ill according to the court. That meant hidden, weak, cursed, or all three. The council questioned me for hours. Where did I learn my spells? Dreams. Who were my parents? Dead. Was I loyal to the crown? Depends on the crown's behavior. That answer caused a lot of coughing. One priest accused me of heresy. I asked him to define heresy. He gave a boring answer. I corrected his theology using church doctrine that would not be written for 200 years. He sat down sweating. One noble demanded I demonstrate magic. I asked him to demonstrate governance. Celia almost smiled. The council grew angrier, which was useful. Angry people reveal the shape of their fear, and one counselor never got angry. Iris. She sat at the far left, young for her position, with silver hair and calm eyes. I remembered her name from future records, but only vaguely. Iris the Silent Regent, a political genius who vanished from history during the first succession crisis. She watched me like she was solving a puzzle. When the council finally paused, Iris spoke. Let the boy examine the king. The room went still. A priest objected, a noble shouted. Celia's expression sharpened. I looked at Iris. She knew. Maybe not about demons, maybe not about me, but she knew the king's illness was not natural. The council tried to refuse, but Iris had cornered them. If they denied a possible healer after publicly questioning my healing ability, they looked guilty. If they allowed it, they risked exposing whatever was hidden. I enjoyed her immediately. They took us to the royal chamber. The king lay behind silk curtains, skin gray, breath shallow. No name needed. He was not the important part. The curse was. It wrapped around him like black vines, feeding from his crown placed on a stand nearby. The crown itself was not made of bone yet, but demon energy had begun reshaping the gold from inside. Gate beneath the crown. Literal. I glanced at Celia, Rowan, Ava, Grant, and Iris. 5 important pieces, enough. Everyone else leaves, I said. The priests refused. I looked at the crown and released one thin pulse of mana. The curse reacted, flashing black. The priests saw it. Their faces changed. Celia raised her staff. Out. They left. Iris closed the door herself. Ava approached the bed, horrified. Can we save him? Yes, I said, but saving him is the smaller problem. Grant pointed at the crown. That thing feels wrong. Because it is becoming a key. Rowan swallowed. To another gate. Under the palace. Iris's voice stayed calm. How long do we have? I liked that question. No denial, no panic, straight to consequence. Before the gate opens, maybe 3 days. Before the people controlling the curse realize we noticed, probably 3 minutes. The wall exploded. Stone and smoke blasted inward. Armored figures poured through the breach, faces hidden, silver rings on every hand, demon-controlled royal guards. Grant moved first, throwing up a fire wall. Ava shielded the king. Rowan dragged Iris behind a barrier. Celia met the attackers head-on, staff flashing. I went for the crown. The curse sensed me and screamed into my mind. I grabbed the crown with both hands. Bad idea. Necessary idea. Demon magic tried to show me the future again. The apocalypse, my friends dead, my body broken, the demon emperor laughing. It wanted me afraid. I was afraid. But fear is just mana with bad posture. I twisted the fear into anger, anger into focus, and focus into a blade. Then I stabbed the crown from the inside. Gold cracked. The curse snapped back, trying to pull the king's life with it. Ava cried out as his pulse faded. I needed a substitute life pattern immediately. So I used the one thing in the room with royal symbolism, strong mana, and no survival rights. The curtains. I redirected the curse into the silk curtains embroidered with the royal crest. They shriveled into black threads and wrapped around the broken crown. The king gasped, curse severed. The attackers froze for half a second as their link stuttered. Grant used that half second beautifully. He compressed fire, just like I had shown him, and launched it at the floor beneath them, not at their bodies. The explosion lifted them into the air without killing them. Rowan caught them in wind. Celia knocked them unconscious. Ava stabilized the king. Iris watched the whole thing, expression unreadable. Then the broken crown whispered. Under the palace, something answered. The floor shook. A deep bell rang from below, though no bell existed. I picked up a shard of cursed gold. We are going downstairs. Palace Underground was older than the palace itself. Every important building in this era seemed to be built on top of horrible ancient nonsense. Future architects would eventually learn to check for demon gates before laying foundations. Apparently, that regulation existed because people like us kept nearly dying. We found the entrance behind the throne, beneath a hidden stairway sealed by royal blood. Iris cut her palm without being asked and pressed it to the seal. Grant looked shocked. "You are royal." "Unfortunately," she said. "Interesting." The stairway opened. Celia stayed behind to control the palace and prevent a coup. Rowan wanted to come but had exhausted too much mana, so I ordered him to protect the king and document everything. That left me, Ava, Grant, and Iris descending into the dark. 4 people. 1 child body with too many secrets. 1 healer. 1 reformed pride bomb. 1 hidden royal strategist. Against a demon gate beneath the capital. Honestly, I had missed having a schedule. At the bottom, we found a cavern lit by blue crystals. In the center stood an enormous door made of black bone, half formed from the crown's curse. Around it, silver-masked figures worked silently. Not cultists. Copies. Each wore the same cracked silver mask. Each moved like a puppet controlled by one mind. The real masked figure had survived the academy. A voice echoed from every mask. "Arlen." Grant tensed. "They know your name." "I am charming." Ava whispered, "What do we do?" I studied the cavern. Direct attack would fail. The gate was feeding from the city above. Every fear, every ambition, every hidden betrayal in the palace poured down into it. The masks were just conductors. So we needed to cut the supply. "Iris," I whispered, "can you start a political crisis upstairs from here?" She looked at me. "What kind?" "The kind that makes every noble in the palace focus on something other than fear." Her eyes narrowed, then she smiled faintly. "Yes." She pulled a signet ring from her sleeve and pressed it into a crystal communication plate hidden in the wall. Of course she knew palace emergency systems. Of course she had access. Her voice rang through the palace above. "All council members, the king has awakened and named me temporary regent. Anyone leaving their post will be declared traitor. Anyone hiding silver rings will be arrested. Anyone objecting may do so in writing after surviving the next hour." The cavern trembled. Above us, fear shifted into outrage. Outrage was noisy, but less useful to demon gates. The black bone door flickered. I looked at Grant, hit the left anchor. "With what?" "Your ego." He understood enough. Fire roared around him, compressed into a lance. He charged, not wildly this time, but with controlled steps. 3 masks moved to block him. Ava raised both hands and released a healing pulse. The masks recoiled. Healing magic harmed them because they were not alive, just wounds pretending to be people. Grant's fire lance pierced the left anchor crystal. I moved right. 6 masks attacked me. My body could not overpower them, so I made them fight geometry. I drew lines in the air with my wand, each line reflecting force at a different angle. Their blades swung at me and slid away, striking each other, the floor, the ceiling. 1 mask lunged, and I tilted gravity under its foot so it fell upward into a stalactite. Another tried to curse me. I opened my mouth and ate the curse. It tasted like burnt coins. Ava yelled, "Do not do that." Later, I spat the curse into a crystal. It cracked, releasing stored city mana in a burst that knocked 3 masks apart. The central gate groaned. The real masked figure appeared atop the bone door, cloak drifting without wind. Their cracked mask had been repaired with black thread. "You gather children and call it resistance," they said. I pointed my wand. "You wear one outfit and call it a personality." Grant laughed despite himself. The masked figure lifted a hand. The fallen masks melted into liquid silver and crawled toward the door. The gate began forming faster. Iris's voice echoed from the communication plate, continuing her political attack. Furthermore, the treasury will be audited. The gate flickered again. Beautiful. Nothing disrupts noble fear like financial panic. But it was not enough. The masked figure aimed at Iris. I moved before the spell fired, but I was too slow. A black spear shot toward her heart. Grant intercepted it. The spear pierced his shoulder and pinned him to the wall. Ava screamed and ran to him. Grant gritted his teeth, still alive. The spear began spreading silver veins through his body, demon metal conversion. If it reached his core, he would become another mask. I could save him or stop the gate. The masked figure knew it. "Choose," they whispered. I hated that trick. So I chose both. I threw my wand to Ava, stabilize him with the second breathing pattern. She caught it, terrified. I cannot. You can. Then I ran toward the gate, unarmed. The masked figure laughed, without a focus. I lifted my bleeding hand. I was the focus before your master learned to crawl. For the first time, the figure hesitated. I slammed my palm onto the bone door and released the smallest, sharpest spell I knew. Not destruction. Editing. Every spell has grammar. Demon gates are written in hunger, fear, and time. I could not erase the whole sentence, but I could change one word. Open became O. The gate stopped. Demon magic shuddered, confused by its own command. Instead of opening a path, it began calculating debt. To whom, for what, how much? Demonic contracts are very serious about unpaid balances. The gate turned on the masked figure. Black chains burst from the bone and wrapped around them. They screamed. Ira stared. What did you do? Made evil do accounting. Ava, using my wand, stabilized Grant's core just in time. Grant ripped the spear from his own shoulder and burned the wound closed, which was stupid, dramatic, and effective. The masked figure fought the chains. Their mask cracked again, revealing one eye underneath. Not human. Not demon either. A clockwork eye. They were a construct. A vessel sent from the future. The eye focused on me. The Emperor remembers your soul. The chains dragged them into the gate. Before they vanished, they laughed. First gate delayed, second gate already blooming. The bone door collapsed into dust. Silence fell. Then the cavern's ceiling cracked. Not from the gates. From something beneath it. Deeper chamber opened below, and cold wind rose from the darkness. Far under the capital, another mana signature pulsed. Older. Bigger. Alive. Ava helped Grant stand. Iris looked down into the new abyss. Grant tried to joke, but his face was pale. I leaned over the edge and felt the pulse answer my soul. My old enemy had not placed one gate in the past. He had planted a garden. And the first seed was waking. He returned to the surface as heroes, prisoners, and suspects all at once. That is how politics works. King survived but remained weak. Iris claimed temporary authority so smoothly that half the council realized they had obeyed her only after it was too late. Celia secured the palace with Academy mages. Rowan arrived with notes, questions, and the haunted expression of a man whose worldview had been dropped from a tower. Grant got his shoulder bandaged and pretended it did not hurt. Ava threatened to sedate him if he kept moving. He immediately stopped. As for me, I stood before the awakened king, the council, and every powerful coward in the capital. They wanted to know what I was. Weapon. Child. Daemon. Miracle. Threat. I let them argue until they exhausted themselves. Then I stepped forward. The capital was nearly consumed because your wards are decorative, your council is compromised, and your testing methods are ancient garbage. Several nobles shouted. I continued louder, but not all caps. I can fix the wards, I can train your mages, I can identify demon corruption, but I will not be owned. The room went quiet. Iris watched from beside the throne. Celia's face revealed nothing. The king, pale and shaking, asked, "What do you want?" Here was the moment. In my old life, I had served kings, churches, councils, and empires. I had accepted titles, missions, sacrifices. I had let others point me at disasters until the disasters became too large to survive. Not again. I want authority over magical defense, I said. A laboratory, a budget, access to all forbidden archives, and legal protection for Ava, Grant, Rowan, and Celia. A noble laughed. You are a child. I turned to him. You are alive because I changed the grammar of a demon gate. Sit down. He said. The king looked to Iris. She nodded once. The decree was issued by sunset. They gave me a ridiculous title, Royal Arcane Consultant. Grant laughed for 5 minutes. Then I made him carry books, and he stopped. My new laboratory was beneath the palace but far away from the abyss, because even I have standards. It had stone tables, crystal lamps, and enough old equipment to make me feel like a caveman given a spoon and asked to build a clock. I upgraded it in 2 days. The third day I had created a demon residue detector disguised as a tea kettle. It screamed whenever corrupted mana came near. By the fourth, I designed training bracelets for Grant and Ava that shocked them gently when their mana flow became sloppy. Grant said the shocks were not gentle. I told him improvement was rarely polite. Rowan helped build a ward lattice around the capital. He was brilliant once someone stopped teaching him wrong. Celia reorganized Academy security with terrifying efficiency. Iris used the Silver Ring investigation to purge half the palace staff and terrify the other half into competence. For the first time since waking in the past, I felt momentum. Then the tea kettle screamed. Not once, 50 times. Across the capital, detectors activated one after another. Demon residue bloomed in the market district, the eastern wall, the old cemetery, and the river docks. A coordinated attack. Grant grabbed his wand, where first. I looked at the map as red points spread. Too many. That was the enemy's strategy: divide us, exhaust us, force me to reveal more power. I smiled. None of them. Ava stared. People could die. Yes, that is why we are not chasing sparks while the arsonist lights the house. I overlaid the attack points. They formed a circle around the capital, not attacks, anchors. The real target was the city's central ley line. Iris entered the lab, already armed. The council is panicking. Good, keep them loud. Rowan rushed in with ward reports. The anchors are pulling mana downward. Toward the abyss, I said. Grant's jaw tightened. The second gate. No. I studied the pattern closer. The anchors were not opening a gate. They were creating a cage. The enemy was not trying to enter the capital. They were trying to trap something inside. My stomach dropped. Evacuate the palace, I said. Iris froze. Why? Before I could answer, the floor split. A roar rose from below, shaking windows across the city. The abyss under the palace erupted with violet light. Something massive climbed upward through stone and warding like they were wet paper. A dragon's skull emerged first. Then ribs of crystal. Then wings made of torn space. Not a living dragon. A dead star dragon, reanimated by demon time magic. I knew that creature. In the future, it had destroyed 3 kingdoms before I killed it by dropping a moon fragment into its mouth. I did not currently have a moon fragment. The palace roof exploded as the star dragon rose into the sky, its empty eye sockets burning violet. The city screamed. Grant whispered, "Can we fight that?" I looked at my weak hands, then at my allies, then at the dragon blotting out the sun. Yes, I said, but we are going to cheat so hard history gets dizzy. The dragon circled above the capital, wings tearing little holes in the sky. Every beat rained shards of cold light. Buildings froze, then cracked. Mages fired spells that vanished against its bones. Demon anchors held the city in a cage, so nobody could escape. This was not an invasion. It was a test. The enemy wanted to know how much of my future power I could still use. Fine. I would show them something worse than power. Preparation. During the past few days, I had installed ward nodes across the capital under the excuse of defense. The council thought they were barriers. Rowan thought they were flow regulators. Celia suspected they were more and wisely did not ask. They were actually pieces of a city-sized spell circle. I had planned to use it in a month. The dragon forced my schedule. I climbed onto the palace roof with Ava, Grant, Rowan, Celia, and Iris behind me. Yes, all 5, my important pieces, my problem children, my accidental team. The dragon opened its jaws. Violet death gathered in its throat. I raised one hand. Rowan, connect the western nodes. He did it instantly. Celia locked the palace spine. Her staff struck stone, wards flared. Iris, order every bell in the city rung 3 times. She spoke into a communication plate without hesitation. Grant, fire at the dragon's left wing. He looked at me like I had asked him to insult a mountain. That will do nothing. Correct, make it angry. He grinned. That I can do. His fire lance shot into the sky and burst against the dragon's wing. The dragon turned toward us. Ava, I said softly, when I fall, do not let me die. She went pale when. Positive thinking. The city bells rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Sound traveled through the streets, towers, pipes, and ward nodes. I caught the vibrations with magic and turned the entire capital into a resonating chamber. The dragon fired. A beam of violet death descended toward the palace. I snapped my fingers. The sound of the bells bent the beam. Not blocked. Bent. Death ray curved around the palace, spiraled through the ward lattice, and shot back upward into the dragon's own chest. The impact blasted a hole through its ribs. The capital erupted in cheers. Too early. The dragon did not need organs. It roared and dove. Now came the hard part. Grant with me. He ran along the roof as the dragon crashed down, claws tearing through towers. Grant launched fire bursts at its face, keeping its attention. I used gravity slips to move faster than my body allowed, each step nearly breaking my ankles. Ava's healing light followed behind, repairing damage as I caused it. The dragon snapped at us. I jumped into its mouth. Grant shouted something rude. Inside the skull, violet fire burned without heat. At the center floated a demon core wrapped in starbone. If I destroyed it, the dragon collapsed. If I touched it wrong, the entire city became a memory. I placed both hands on the core. The demon emperor's voice whispered from inside. Little Arlen. Rage almost ruined me. Almost. I smiled instead. Your pet has poor dental hygiene. Then I activated the second layer of my trap. City Spell Circle did not just redirect energy, it recorded it. The dragon's death beam, its flight pattern, its roar, even the demon frequency inside its core. All of it had been captured by the ward nodes. I fed the recording back into the core, one heartbeat out of sync. The dragon's own magic began arguing with itself. Outside, its body convulsed. Inside, the core cracked. But my hands were burning. My child body could not handle the backlash. My mana channels tore open one by one. Ava screamed from the roof, pouring healing magic across the distance. Grant blasted a path through the dragon's jaw and grabbed my collar. Done, he shouted. Not yet. I bit my thumb, smeared blood across the core, and added one final command. Sleep. The core shattered. The star dragon froze mid-roar. Then it collapsed. Not onto the city. I had angled its final motion. The massive skeleton folded inward, compressed by its own wing gravity, and crashed into the river outside the walls. A wave rose taller than houses. Celia activated the eastern barrier. The wave split around the city and flooded empty fields. Only then did I let myself pass out. And I woke. Ava was asleep in a chair beside my bed, still holding my wrist to monitor my pulse. Grant was asleep on the floor, bandaged and snoring like a wounded bear cub. Rowan was at a desk, writing frantically. Celia stood by the window. Iris stood near the door. Apparently, nobody trusted me not to die unsupervised. Celia noticed I was awake. You slept for 2 days. Lazy of me. Iris approached. The capital calls you the boy who felled the star dragon. Terrible title, too long. Rowan looked up, eyes bright. Do you realize what you did with acoustic mana redirection? Yes. It changes everything. Most things do. Grant groaned from the floor. Can we celebrate before discovering more terrible news? The tea kettle screamed. Everyone looked at it. Grant covered his face. I hate that kettle. The scream was different this time. Lower, deeper. The detector was not sensing demon residue nearby. It was receiving a message. I forced myself upright despite of awaking and immediately telling me not to move. The kettle shook, steam forming letters in the air. A map. Not of the capital. Of the continent. 5 black points glowed across distant lands, one in the frozen north, one beneath the western sea, one in the desert ruins, one in the Beast Kingdom, one at the Academy. The Academy point pulsed brightest. My blood went cold. Grayvale. Celia's face hardened. What is happening there? The steam shifted. A silver mask appeared. Cracked. Smiling. Its voice hissed through the kettle. Second gate blooming. Then the map burned away. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Grant stood, wincing. We are going back. Ava nodded, already gathering supplies. Rowan grabbed his notes. Celia headed for the door. Iris looked at me. You can barely stand. I swung my legs off the bed and nearly fell. Ava caught me with a glare strong enough to injure lesser men. I smiled. 1,000 years ago, I had stood alone at the end of the world and lost. This time I had allies, a capital forced to listen, enemies revealing themselves too early, a weak body growing stronger every day, and a future demon emperor who thought planting gates in the past would guarantee his victory. He forgot something important. I had already seen how his story ends. Now I was rewriting the beginning. We left for Grayvale before dawn. Above the road, the real moon faded. Beside it, a second moon appeared. Black, false, and opening like an eye. The road back to Grayvale should have taken 3 days. I made it take 6 hours. Not because my body was healed. It was not. Every breath scraped against my ribs like someone had hidden broken glass inside my lungs. My legs trembled. My mana core pulsed with that strange hollow ache that came after forcing too much power through channels too small to survive it. But pain was just information. And information could be used. Royal carriage waiting outside the capital had been built for comfort, not speed. Thick wheels, velvet seats, gold trim, the kind of useless luxury nobles loved because it made traveling slower but more expensive. The driver looked at our group, then looked at me half-collapsed against Ava's shoulder, and immediately said the horses could not run hard with a patient inside. I asked him how attached he was to the carriage. He did not like that question. Grant understood it first, his face twisted. You are not turning the carriage into a spell array. I would never do that, I said. Everyone relaxed for half a second. Then I added, I am turning the road into one. Before anyone could stop me, I dragged my boot through the dirt and carved 3 crooked lines across the carriage tracks. To the driver, it probably looked like a child scratching nonsense into mud. To me, it was a folded acceleration circuit based on a transport technique that would not be invented for another 700 years. Ava grabbed my wrist. You are injured. That is why I am using the road. The road is not injured. Rowan's eyes widened. That is either brilliant or illegal. Both is usually where the good magic lives. I pressed my palm to the ground. Mana leaked from me in a thin blue thread, but instead of forcing it forward, I let the dirt drink it. The road answered with a low hum. Pebbles lifted. Wagon ruts glowed. Every footprint left by every traveler became a tiny anchor point. Most mages thought roads were dead things. That was because most mages were unimaginative. Road remembered weight, it remembered direction, it remembered desire. Every person who had ever walked toward Grayvale had left behind a little pressure, a little urgency, a little intention. I simply gathered all of it, stitched it together, and told the road it was tired of waiting. The carriage lurched. The driver screamed. The horses did not move. Instead, the ground itself slid beneath us. The carriage shot forward like an arrow fired by a mountain. Trees became green smears. Fence posts snapped past so quickly they looked like the teeth of a giant comb. The driver clung to the reins while the horses floated an inch above the road, their eyes wide with the proud confusion of animals who had just been promoted to decoration. Grant slammed into one wall of the carriage. Rowan slammed into Grant. Celia calmly braced one hand against the ceiling as if she took enchanted road disasters to breakfast. Iris sat across from me, watching the glowing horizon with a face so still it made me nervous. Ava was the only one not impressed. She held me down with one hand and checked my pulse with the other. You are bleeding again, she said. Technically, the blood is leaving because it believes in freedom. Arlen, I will put it back later. She narrowed her eyes, and for a second I remembered war hospitals from my first life, where healers had dragged me away from battlefields, while I insisted I could still fight if someone nailed my spine into place. Ava had that same expression, the look of someone who had already decided she would save me even if she had to knock me unconscious to make me cooperate. That was inconvenient. It was also comforting. The false moon followed us. First it hung low behind the clouds, a black coin with a thin silver edge. Then, as the carriage road spell dragged us through valleys and over rivers, the moon widened. The eye in its center turned slowly, searching. Whenever its gaze passed over the world, shadows leaned the wrong direction. Celia opened the window just enough to feel the air. It is marking locations. I nodded. The second gate is not fully open yet. The false moon is a targeting lens. It is trying to find stable vessels. Grant looked at me. Stable vessels. People with enough mana and enough arrogance to believe a voice in their head is destiny. He went quiet. I did not need to say what we were all thinking. Grayvale Academy was full of children trained from birth to want greatness more than oxygen. Noble heirs, scholarship prodigies, desperate commoners, jealous rivals, teachers with old grudges. If the gate wanted ambition, it had picked a buffet. Rowan pulled out his notebook, even though the carriage was moving fast enough to make writing a crime against paper. Can we shut it before arrival? Not from here. Can we slow it? Maybe. How? I looked at the false moon, then I looked at the carriage roof. Grant groaned. I know that face. What face? The face you make right before something explodes in a way that technically helps us. I smiled and climbed through the window. Ava caught my ankle. Absolutely not. I only need the roof. You need bed rest. The roof is shaped like a bed if you are brave. She started pulling me back inside, so I did the only sensible thing. I turned my sleeve into a decoy arm. Ava held the empty sleeve for one confused second while I slipped out the other side and rolled onto the carriage roof. Wind punched me in the face. My ribs screamed. My vision flashed white. Worth it. I spread my fingers against the polished wood and began carving with raw mana, not a big spell. Big spells were for people who wanted enemies to notice them. I carved a tiny one, a liar's spell, a magician's crooked mirror. The false moon was searching for the academy through mana resonance, so I gave it another academy. I made a fake Grayvale out of road dust. Every rock we passed became a classroom. Every puddle became a training field. Every scarecrow became a professor with terrible posture. The illusion lasted only a breath at each point, but the false moon did not need detail. It needed a signal. I fed it signals by the thousand. The black eye above twitched. Then its gaze split. Celia leaned out from the window. You made it cross-eyed. I prefer magically indecisive. A beam of shadow shot from the false moon and struck a cow pasture 3 miles east of the real academy. The pasture vanished. Not burned, not crushed, vanished as if the world had forgotten it belonged there. A perfect circular hole appeared in the ground, filled with purple mist and extremely offended cows standing around the edge. Grant stared from below. That would have hit Grayvale. Yes. How many more times can you redirect it? I coughed blood into my hand. How many cow pastures do we have? Ava climbed onto the roof. She did not use magic, she used anger. The moment she reached me, she stabbed a healing needle into my shoulder and dragged me down hard enough that my skull bounced against the roof. You are done, she said. I am strategically resting. You are strategically bleeding on royal property. Another shadow beam fell behind us, this time striking the fake academy I had made from a riverbank. Steam exploded. Fish rained from the sky. Rowan's voice rose from inside the carriage. One fish is inside my shirt. Grant said good, it is probably the smartest passenger. The road spell carried us onward. By the time Grayvale appeared on the horizon, dawn had turned the sky gray, and the false moon hung directly above the academy like a lid over a boiling pot. The academy had changed. Stone towers I remembered as proud and clean were wrapped in black veins. The training fields were split open by glowing cracks. Students ran between buildings while teachers formed defensive circles, but every spell they cast bent upward toward the moon and dissolved. Worse, the central courtyard had become a pit. A silver mask floated above it. Not the full demon emperor, not yet, just a seed of him, a splinter sent backward through time, but it smiled with the same patient cruelty that had watched my world die. And under the mask, hundreds of students knelt. Their eyes were open. Their shadows were not attached to their feet. Grant went pale. They are alive, right? For now. Celia's hand moved toward her sword. Plan. I looked at the courtyard, the moon, the possessed students, the teachers failing, the black veins pulsing through the walls, and the mask waiting like it had all the time in the world. Then I looked at the academy bell tower. A slow smile pulled at my mouth. Grant followed my gaze and immediately looked miserable. Why are you smiling at the bell? Because everyone is looking at the monster. And so the monster will never expect me to weaponize the class schedule. The carriage slammed through the front gate before the guards even realized the road had delivered us. I jumped out, nearly collapsed, and pretended that was a tactical crouch. Ava did not believe me, but she had bigger problems because 3 possessed students turned toward us and raised their wands. Their shadows moved first. Black blades shot from the ground. Celia cut 2 apart before they reached us. Grant blocked the third, his golden spear magic flaring bright enough to make the courtyard shadows recoil. He looked shocked that it worked. I did not. Grant's mana had always been strong. His problem was that he used it like a noble showing off jewelry, pretty, direct, and easy to steal. But after everything we had survived, his magic had changed. It had edges now. Do not hit the students, I said. Hit their shadows. Grant gritted his teeth. That would have been useful 1 second earlier. You looked bored. The first wave rushed us. I did not fight them head-on. That would be stupid, and I had already used my stupidity quota for the morning. Instead, I snapped my fingers and activated every cleaning charm in the courtyard. Grayvale Academy had hundreds of little household spells hidden in its stones. Brooms swept dust. Gutters pushed rainwater. Chalk erased itself from boards. Laundry lines heated in winter. Tiny conveniences too weak for battle. Unless someone connected them. Every broom in the academy shot out of storage closets like wooden missiles. The possessed students were not prepared to be attacked by housekeeping. Brooms wrapped around ankles, wet towels slapped faces, buckets rolled under feet, chalk dust exploded in thick white clouds, revealing the shadow strings connecting each student to the silver mask. Rowan understood instantly. The strings are visible in powder. Then make more powders. His eyes lit up with the terrifying joy of a scholar given permission to ruin property. He threw his bag into the air and released every powdered reagent he owned. Blue dust, red dust, silver dust, some suspicious green dust that screamed when it touched sunlight. The courtyard became a storm of colors. Hundreds of black strings appeared. Celia moved first. Her sword flashed, cutting strings without cutting flesh. Grant followed, using spear thrusts of light to pin shadows to the ground. Ava touched possessed students as they fell and sealed their mana channels before the gate could grab them again. I ran toward the bell tower. I say ran. It was more like falling forward with ambition. The silver mask noticed me halfway there. Its voice slid into my skull. Little Mage. I almost laughed. The demon emperor had called me many things in my first life. Last hope, broken star, final insect. He had never called me little. That was new. You are early, it whispered. I kept moving. A shadow wall erupted in front of me. I threw a pebble at it. The pebble became a door. That was not metaphorical. I had carved a temporary entrance rune into the pebble while pretending to trip. The shadow wall accepted the rune because demon magic loved symbolic structures, and a door was the oldest symbol of passage. The wall opened politely. I stepped through. The mask's smile thinned. Interesting. Try not to fall in love. I am emotionally unavailable. It sent 3 shadow beasts after me. No names, no dramatic pauses, just claws, teeth, and bad timing. I ducked under the first, slapped a detention slip onto its forehead, and let the academy rules do the rest. Grayvale's old founders had enchanted official disciplinary papers, so students could not destroy them without a teacher's approval. The shadow beast was not a student, but it was inside the academy, attacking during class hours, and technically violating uniform policy by not having a body. The detention slip activated. A glowing chain yanked the beast into the nearest empty classroom. The second beast lunged. I pointed at Grant. Grant, who had no idea he had become part of my plan, thrust his spear at a shadow string across the courtyard. The light reflected off a floating mirror charm I had stolen from a hallway. The beam bent, struck the beast from behind, and launched it into the fountain. The third beast almost got me. Its claws cut through my coat and scraped my shoulder. Pain burst down my arm. My knees buckled. For 1 second, I was back on the final battlefield, kneeling under black skies, while the demon emperor stepped over the bodies of people who had trusted me. Then Iris appeared beside me. She did not shout, she did not make a heroic speech. She simply touched the beast's shadow with 2 fingers, and the beast froze. Her own shadow rose behind her like a curtain. I can hold it for 4 seconds, she said. I stared. You learned shadow binding. I watched you cheat. Beautiful. I slapped the beast with a second detention slip. It vanished into the classroom with the first one. Iris looked at me. Did you just discipline a demon? It was late to class. We reached the bell tower stairs. The tower was old, narrow, and full of dust. It had been built before modern spell elevators, before floating platforms, before architects discovered that stairs were a personal insult. Each step sent lightning through my ribs. I swallowed blood and kept climbing. Iris followed without asking why. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. Grant questioned everything because he hated being surprised. Rowan questioned everything because his brain collected questions like trophies. Ava questioned everything because she wanted me alive. Celia questioned only the parts that involved risk and then did the risky thing anyway. Iris watched. Then she moved when movement mattered. Halfway up the tower, the walls turned soft. Black veins pushed through the stone. Faces formed in them. Students, teachers, strangers from the future, people whose deaths I remembered. They whispered my name in voices stolen from old nightmares. You failed us. You ran backwards. You will fail again. My hand tightened on the railing. For a moment, the tower tilted. Demon Seed was not just attacking the academy. It was digging into memory, my memory. It wanted me unstable, emotional, angry. It wanted me to throw power at it like I had done in my first life, when every desperate victory had cost 10 more people their future. I breathed in. Then I smiled. The faces paused. You picked the wrong trauma, I said. I have studied mine. I pressed my palm to the wall and released 1 drop of mana. Not a blast, not a shield. A filing system. My memories were messy, but they were mine. I sorted them by date, pain level, usefulness, and how much they wanted to ruin my day. Then I shoved the demon whispers into a mental drawer labeled suspicious garbage and locked it. The walls shrieked. Iris stared at me like she had just watched someone organize a hurricane. You can do that. No, but I can pretend confidently until reality feels awkward and agrees. We climbed. At the top, the academy bell waited inside a wooden frame. It was huge, bronze, and covered in founder runes. The bell had only one purpose: announce class periods across campus. To everyone else, it was a bell. To me, it was the largest sound-based mana distributor in the academy. Every student knew its tone. Every classroom was tuned to it. Every hallway charm listened for it. Every dormitory barrier recognized it. For centuries, nobody had used it for anything except telling teenagers when to stop pretending they understood theory. A waste. I ran my fingers across the runes. The bell resisted me. Of course it did. Founder magic was stubborn. It knew I was not an authorized professor, not a headmaster, not a noble approved by the board. I was just the weakest scholarship child in school. So I did not force it. I appealed to bureaucracy. I pulled a crumpled paper from my pocket. Grant's old challenge notice. When he had signed when he tried to humiliate me in front of the class before my memories fully settled, it named me as a recognized participant in an official academy duel. It also included a tiny clause at the bottom stating that all academy systems must recognize duel participants for safety monitoring. Nobody read the tiny clauses. Tiny clauses were where civilization hid its most useful crimes. I slapped the notice onto the bell. The runes blinked. I added a second paper, the fake detention record I had made for myself weeks ago when I needed access to the punishment archive. The bell hesitated. I added a third paper, a cafeteria complaint form signed by Rowan after soup exploded during a failed experiment. The complaint listed me as a witness. Bell accepted the pile of nonsense as a valid administrative identity. Iris whispered, "You hacked the bell with paperwork. I prefer negotiated with institutional weakness." The silver mask felt the connection open. Down in the courtyard, it turned toward the tower. Too late. I punched the bell. It did not ring. It laughed. Deep bronze sound rolled across Grayvale, through classrooms, dormitories, tunnels, gardens, roofs, and training fields. Every charm in the academy woke at once. Every chalkboard displayed the same message. Class is in session. Then the bell assigned the demon gate a seat. Courtyard pit snapped into the shape of a lecture hall. Stone benches rose in circles around the silver mask. The possessed students, their strings suddenly recognized as improper classroom behavior, were dragged into neat rows and pinned safely in place. The black veins crawling over the buildings were forced into straight lines like badly behaved handwriting. The mask trembled. "What is this?" "Remedial education," I said. The bell rang again. 1,000 tiny academy rules activated around the gate. No fighting in lecture halls. No unauthorized summoning during theory hour. No destructive spells without faculty supervision. No outside entities on campus without registration. The gate fought them, of course. Ancient demon magic was stronger than school rules. But the rules were everywhere. A demon could break a chain. It could not easily break 1,000 cobwebs at once. Celia used the opening to reach the pit. Grant and Ava cleared the remaining students. Rowan hurled powder bombs into the air, mapping every shadow string still attached to the mask. I leaned against the bell frame, dizzy. Iris grabbed my sleeve. "You are fading." "I am not fading. I am dramatically dimming." "Arlen." The mask's voice sharpened in my mind. "You were stronger at the end." Cold moved through me. It knew. Not everything, not the full shape of my first life, but enough. "You wore a crown of broken spells," it whispered. "You burned kingdoms to buy minutes. You called yourself savior while standing on graves." My fingers curled. The bell's hum faltered. Below, the pit widened. Demon Seed had found the crack, not guilt. I had too much guilt for that to be a crack. It was more like furniture. The crack was pride, the ugly little part of me that still believed power should have been enough, the part that hated being weak more than it feared death. The mask offered exactly what that part wanted. "Open your core," it whispered. "Take the moon, take the gate, become what you were." For 1 second, I saw it. My future strength returning all at once, my adult mana core blazing inside this child body, every enemy crushed, every doubter silenced, every kingdom forced to kneel before the mage who had already buried them once. It would feel incredible. It would also rip my body apart and give the demon seed a perfect vessel. Temptation was never stupid. Stupid temptation failed quickly. The dangerous kind always came dressed as justice. I took a breath. Then I laughed. The mask went still. "You think I miss being the strongest?" I asked. "I was the strongest and I still lost." The bell steadied. "This time I am trying something more annoying." I looked down at my allies moving through chaos. Teamwork. Then I dropped from the bell tower. Iris shouted behind me. Falling hurt less than stairs. Also, it was faster. I shaped the air under my body into stacked shields, each one breaking as I hit it. It was not graceful. It was not safe. I bounced off 3 invisible platforms, spun through a cloud of Rowan's screaming green powder, clipped a roof edge with my boot, and landed in the courtyard fountain hard enough to empty half of it. Ava saw me rise from the water and looked ready to invent new medical violence. "No time," I said. There is always time to stop being insane. After the gates. The bell had trapped the demon seed, but traps were temporary. The false moon above was feeding it power. We needed to cut the moon from the pit. The obvious method was to destroy the moon. The clever method was to make the moon destroy its own connection. I pointed at Grant, hit me. He stared, finally, a plan I understand. With light magic. Less satisfying. Ava stepped between us, no. It will not hurt much. That means it will hurt a lot. Yes, but educationally. Celia understood before the others. You want to turn yourself into a reflective anchor. Exactly. Grant looked horrified. I do not know what that means. Means, Rowan said, adjusting his cracked glasses. Your spear beam enters Arlen's modified mana channels, reflects through the water around him, catches the moonbeam, and sends the gate's targeting signal back upward. Grant stared at him. Rowan shrugged. I am guessing. Good guess, I said. Ava's expression hardened. His channels are damaged. I only need them to be shiny. You are impossible. Frequently. Mask thrashed against the lecture hall rules. Stone benches cracked. The possessed students began shaking. The false moon opened wider, its black eye filling the sky over Grayvale. No more time. I stepped into the fountain's center and carved reflection runes across the water with my toes. My body became the hinge of the spell. Terrible idea. Necessary idea. Grant raised his spear. For a moment, his hand trembled. He was not the arrogant boy who had thrown mud at me anymore. Not completely. He still had pride, but now it carried fear, and fear made pride useful. It meant he understood consequences. Do not miss, I said. His jaw tightened. Do not die. Both demands are rude. He fired. Light pierced my chest. Not physically, mostly. It entered my mana core like a sunrise kicked down a door. My vision turned gold. My bones hummed. Every damaged channel lit up at once, and pain became so large it stopped being pain and became weather. I bent the light downward. The fountain water flashed. The moon beam touched it. For one perfect instant, the demon seed, the false moon, Grant's spear, the academy bell, and my broken core were part of the same circuit. Then I changed the address. The false moon had been sending power to the gate. I made it send power to itself. The sky screamed. The black eye above Grayvale convulsed as its own mana looped backward. Cracks spread across its surface. Shadow rained down in flakes that evaporated before touching the ground. The silver mask shrieked. Zelia struck. Her sword cut through the largest shadow string, the one connecting the mask to the pit. Grant's second spear strike pinned the mask in place. Rowan's powder marked the fractures. Ava, who had apparently decided healing could be offensive if applied with enough disrespect, slammed both hands into the ground and sealed the students' mana channels at the same time. I reached into the reflected moonlight and grabbed the gate's name. Every spell had a name. Not a spoken name, a shape, a purpose. A sentence reality told itself so magic knew what to become. Demon gates had ugly names, built from hunger, fear, and ambition. This gate's name was simple. Open for the worthy. I changed one word. Open for the worthless. The gate choked. Demon magic loved hierarchy. It believed power proved value. By rewriting the condition, I forced the gate to search for the one thing its own logic refused to recognize. Worthlessness. And because demon magic considered everyone beneath it worthless, the gate suddenly tried to open for every living creature on campus at once. Too many keys. Too many doors. The spell collapsed under its own arrogance. The pit folded inward. The silver mask cracked from forehead to chin. For half a second behind it, I saw an eye that was not a seed, not a splinter, but something vast and awake across time. The future demon emperor looked at me. Not through the gate. Through history. Its voice was calm now. Found you. Then the mask shattered. The explosion threw everyone backward. I hit the fountain wall, sank underwater, and for a while the world became bubbles and darkness. When I woke, I was in the infirmary. Again. At this point, the infirmary bed and I were developing a relationship neither of us wanted. Ava sat beside me with her arms crossed. Grant leaned against the wall with one eye bruised and his hair burned at the ends. Rowan slept face down on a pile of notes. Celia stood by the window, watching the courtyard below. Iris was in the corner, quietly repairing a torn glove with shadow threads. Nobody spoke when I opened my eyes. That was how I knew I was in trouble. I tried to sit up. Ava pushed me back down with one finger. Good morning, I said. It is evening, she replied. Then good evening. You were unconscious for 2 days. I considered that efficient recovery. Grant snorted. You call that recovery? The healers called it a paperwork nightmare. Rowan lifted his head, ink on his cheek. Technically, the paperwork nightmare began when the bell declared a demon gate absent from class. Celia turned from the window. The academy survived, barely. The students are free, the teachers are confused, the board is terrified. Good, I said. Fear improves listening. Ava did not smile. Your mana channels almost crystallized. That made me quiet. Crystallization was bad. In my first life, I had seen old mages turn their channels into solid mana after too many overloads. It made them powerful for a few weeks, then killed them from the inside. My child body was adapting too fast. That sounded useful. It was actually dangerous. Power gained too quickly had no loyalty. It would burn the house down just to prove it could make light. How bad? I asked. Ava's gaze softened despite herself. Bad enough that you cannot keep using yourself as a spell component. Grant raised a hand. I support this extremely specific medical advice. I looked at my fingers. Thin lines of faint silver ran under the skin, like cracks filled with moonlight. The gate had left something behind. A mark, or a key, possibly both. Before I could examine it, the infirmary door opened. No dramatic entrance, no guards, no announcement. Just the head of the academy stepping inside with the expression of a man who had aged 10 years in 2 days. He did not get a name from me because he had never earned one. He looked at Grant first because nobles always looked at other nobles first, then at Celia because authority recognized authority, then finally at me, the scholarship weakling who had turned his institution into a demon classroom. You are to attend an emergency hearing, he said. Ava stood. He is injured. The board insists. I smiled. Of course they did. When people owed you their lives, they had 2 choices, thank you or investigate you. Institutions preferred the second because gratitude did not come with forms. Perfect, I said. I was hoping to be judged by people who hid under desks during the invasion. The head's mouth tightened, careful. No. The room went still. I swung my legs over the bed. Pain stabbed upward, but I kept my face calm. Weakness was allowed. Looking owned was not. I saved your academy twice, I said. The first time you called it luck. The second time you called a hearing. Let us see what you call the third. Grant grinned despite himself. Ava looked like she wanted to stop me, but also wanted to see where this went. The hearing chamber was packed. Teachers, board members, noble parents, surviving students, everyone who had mocked me, doubted me, ignored me, or decided I was useful only after the sky tried to eat them. I walked in wearing an infirmary coat, bandages on my arms, and the calm expression of someone who had already buried better judges. Whispers spread. The weakest student. The disaster child. The bell thief. That last one was fair. The board sat behind a long table on a raised platform. They wanted height to create authority. Adorable. Head accused me of unauthorized spellwork, destruction of academy property, manipulation of institutional enchantments, reckless endangerment, and falsifying documents. I listened politely. Then I raised my hand. Do I get to respond? One board member sneered, briefly. Wonderful. I pulled a stack of papers from inside my coat. Grant whispered from behind me, where did those come from? Never ask a mage where he stores evidence. I placed the first paper on the table. This is the safety monitoring clause from official dual regulations. It granted me limited interaction rights with academy systems. Second paper, this is the emergency hazard policy, which states that students may activate defensive enchantments if faculty are incapacitated. Third paper, this is the maintenance contract for the bell tower, which defines the bell as a campus-wide alert device, not ceremonial property. Fourth paper, this is a cafeteria complaint, establishing that the soup explosion last month counted as a magical hazard drill, which means the academy was already under heightened safety status. The chamber became very quiet. Rowan whispered, I cannot believe the soup mattered. The soup always matters, I whispered back. The head's face turned red. This is absurd. No, I said. Absurd is building a magical academy with enough loopholes for a 12-year-old to legally fight a demon gate using stationery. A few students laughed before they could stop themselves. The board did not like that. Good. Laughter was a crack in fear. I pressed harder. You want to punish me because punishment makes you feel in control. But if I am guilty, then every spell I cast becomes unauthorized. That means the demon gate was not legally repelled. That means the academy must report total defensive failure to the crown. That means parents will withdraw students, donors will panic, noble families will demand resignations, and the king will ask why a child understood your systems better than the people paid to maintain them. Silence. I leaned forward. Or you can call my actions an emergency field response, give me access to restricted archives, and pretend this was your idea. The head stared at me. Grant muttered, he is extorting the school board. Celia said quietly, successfully. A board member tried to recover, and why would we give you restricted archive access? I lifted my silver-marked hand. The room's candles bent toward it. Because the gate left a map inside my mana channels, I said, and unless you want the next moon to open over your dining halls, I need to read things your ancestors were too scared to burn. That changed everything. Fear shifted from me to the future. By sunset, I had a sealed pass to the restricted archive, an official pardon written in language so painful it probably made the ink ashamed, and a new title nobody knew how to interpret. Emergency Auxiliary Researcher. It sounded fake because it was. I had invented it during the hearing, and the board had approved it to avoid admitting I had cornered them. Power was nice. Administrative power was hilarious. Restricted archive sat beneath Grayvale, below the old library, below the sealed classrooms, below the tunnels students used for dares. Its door was made of black stone and white bone, with 13 locks that required 13 different faculty keys. I opened it with a spoon. To be fair, it was a very good spoon. I had stolen it from the infirmary because its handle was silver, and silver remembered moonlight better than iron. I bent the spoon into a curve, carved a memory rune along the edge, and showed each lock a reflected image of the faculty key it wanted to see. Grant watched with open disgust. Locks mean nothing to you, do they? Locks are just questions asked by doors. And you answer with cutlery. Only when I am being polite. Inside, the archive smelled like dust, old leather, and secrets that had been waiting too long to feel important. Rows of chained books floated in the dark, scrolls whispered behind glass, broken relics sat on shelves, each one sealed in enough warning labels to make them attractive. Rowan almost cried. Celia grabbed his collar before he could run into the dangerous section. Ava kept one hand near my back, ready to catch me if my body remembered it was supposed to be resting. Ira stayed near the shadows. Grant pretended not to be impressed and failed. The silver marks under my skin warmed. I followed the sensation to a sealed case at the far end of the archive. Inside was a stone tablet carved with 5 circles around a black eye. The same 5 points the kettle had shown. North Sea Desert Beast Kingdom Academy. Under the circles were old words from a language that would become dead in 300 years. I read them easily. The others waited. My mouth went dry. Celia noticed first. What does it say? I looked at the tablet again, hoping the words would change. They did not. It says the gates are not entrances. Rowan adjusted his glasses. Then what are they? Worms. Nobody moved. The archive seemed to grow colder. I forced myself to keep reading. Each gate was not meant to let the demon emperor enter the past. That would have been too simple, too direct, too easy to stop. The gates were meant to grow versions of him. 5 seeds. 5 conditions. 5 possible bodies. When all 5 matured, they would call to one another across the continent and choose the strongest vessel. That vessel would become the demon emperor 1,000 years early. Meaning I had not stopped the invasion. I had forced it to evolve. Grant's voice was low. How long until the next one blooms? The silver marks on my hand pulsed. A black circle on the tablet lit up. The Western Sea. Water dripped from the ceiling, though we were deep underground. Then the archive floor rippled like a pond. A voice rose from beneath us. Not the mask's voice. Younger. Hungrier. First seed broken, second seed waking. The chain books began slamming against their restraints. The tablet cracked. A wave of black water burst from the stone and flooded the archive. For 1 second, everyone froze. Then I saw what was inside the water. Teeth. A lot of teeth. I grinned despite the terror climbing my spine. Because the Western Sea Gate had made its first mistake. It had attacked me in a library. And libraries were full of weapons pretending to be books. I snapped my fingers. Every chained book opened at once. Pages flew out like blades. The black water surged toward us. The archive screamed. For most people, a room full of ancient books was a room full of words. For me, it was an armory that had been politely waiting for someone rude enough to use it. The first wave of pages sliced into the black water, but instead of cutting it apart, the water swallowed them. The teeth inside it chewed through history, spell theory, royal blood records, forbidden maps, and the handwritten complaints of dead professors. Ava shouted my name. I heard the fear in her voice, but I did not look back. Looking back wasted half a second, and half a second was enough time for demonic water to turn my ankles into a memory. I stepped onto a floating bookcase as the floor disappeared beneath the flood. Grant grabbed Rowan by the collar and jumped to another shelf. Iris was already climbing the iron ladder attached to the west wall, calm enough to look annoyed that the ancient apocalypse had splashed mud on her boots. The black water rose fast. Too fast. That meant it was not actually water. It was a curse wearing water like a costume. So I stopped treating it like water. I flicked 2 fingers and drew a tiny circle in the air. A simple heat spell appeared. The kind they taught to first-year students so they could warm soup. Black Flood laughed with 1,000 wet mouths because a soup-warming spell was obviously useless against a demonic tide. That was the problem with monsters. They never respected small spells until the small spell robbed them blind. I aimed the heat spell at the air above the flood, not the flood itself. Then I twisted the circle inside out and made the heat spell steal temperature instead of giving it. The air froze. Not enough to stop the flood. Just enough to create a skin of frost across the nearest wave. The teeth tried to chew through it. That was when I snapped the frost skin with a sound spell. The ice exploded into thousands of needles and shot straight into the mouths hidden in the water. The flood screamed. Grant stared at me from the floating shelf. Did you just stab water in the throat? Not the throat, I said, jumping to another case as black waves smashed the spot where I had been standing. The ego. The archives shook harder. Chains snapped from the ceiling. Books spun wildly around the room, some opened to pages written in fire, some opened to pages written in blood, one opened to a diagram so illegal that the diagram itself tried to crawl away before anyone could read it. Rowan almost fell reaching for it. I caught the back of his robe with wind magic and yanked him onto a stone table. Do not flirt with the cursed diagram, I shouted. I was not flirting, Rowan said. I was studying. That is worse. Black water formed a hand the size of a carriage and slammed down at us. Grant moved first, that was new. The old Grant would have waited for someone to praise him before acting. This Grant lowered his shoulder, filled his sword with fire, and cut through the wrist before it could crush Rowan. The severed hand burst into droplets. Every droplet grew teeth. Ava raised both hands. Golden light poured from her palms and formed a dome around Grant before the droplets reached him. The teeth bounced against the healing barrier, angry and hungry, chewing at the glow. Ava's face went pale. The barrier was protecting Grant, but the curse was trying to eat her mana through it. I clicked my tongue. The Western Seed was clever. Not smarter than me, obviously, but clever enough to be annoying. It had not attacked with brute strength. It had attacked with appetite. Anything magical it touched became food. Any spell thrown directly into it would only make it stronger. So the answer was simple. I had to feed it poison and convince it that poison was dessert. I jumped from the stone table to the highest shelf, landing on one knee as the whole archive tilted. The flood below rolled to one side and exposed the floor for a heartbeat. There, under the water carved into the stone, was a drainage rune. Not for water, for knowledge. Ancient archives used memory drains to remove dangerous information from objects before storing them. A cursed book, a haunted letter, a spell written by a mad king. The drain would pull the toxic idea out and seal it under the floor. A library weapon. Exactly what I needed. The problem was the rune had been dead for centuries. The bigger problem was that activating it required a librarian's authority sigil, and the last librarian with that authority had probably been dust for 700 years. The biggest problem was that the black water noticed me noticing it. The flood folded inward. A face rose from it. Not a human face. Not even close. It was a circle of mouths arranged around one large eye, like some drunk god had tried to invent a flower and gave up halfway. The eye rolled toward me. Time wound, it whispered. The words hit the inside of my skull. Grant flinched, Ava dropped to one knee, Rowan covered his ears. Iris tightened her grip on the ladder, and for the first time since I had met her, her face lost color. So they heard it too. Bad. The Western Seed was not fully awake, but it could speak through the flood. It could smell the tear and history around me. Little thief, the mouth flower said, you broke the first cradle. I break a lot of things, I said. You will need to be more specific. The eye narrowed. The flood rose higher. A bookcase cracked under my feet. I needed the drain rune. I also needed the librarian's sigil. I had neither. So I made one. The wonderful thing about authority was that most systems did not actually care if you deserved it. They cared if you looked enough like the right person while holding the right shape at the right angle. The archive was old. Old systems were prideful. Prideful systems were easy to insult. I sliced my thumb on a broken chain and pressed blood onto a flying page. With my other hand, I pulled ink from 6 open books at once, stripping letters from their paragraphs and dragging them through the air. The letters screamed as I stole them. That was normal. Important ink always had opinions. I twisted the stolen letters into an ancient title. Temporary Assistant Deputy Substitute Emergency Librarian. Rowan, even while nearly drowning in cursed water, looked offended. That is not a real office. It is now, I said. I slapped the bloody page against my chest and poured mana into the fake title. The archive paused. Every chain in the room went still. The book stopped spinning. The flood hesitated. For one beautiful second, the ancient library considered whether it was petty enough to accept a forged emergency librarian just because the alternative was being eaten by demon water. Then a bell rang beneath the floor. The fake title burned into my robe. Accepted. I grinned. Never underestimate bureaucracy. It was just magic with more paperwork. The drain rune lit beneath the flood. The mouthflower shrieked and surged at me. Too late. I dropped from the shelf straight toward the black water. Ava screamed. Grant reached for me. I ignored both of them and landed with one palm flat against the surface of the flood. The teeth bit into my hand. Pain flashed white through my arm. A pain was information, and information could be used. The instant the curse tried to eat my mana, I opened a path into the archive drain and fed it exactly what it wanted. A spell. A big one. A delicious one. At least that was how it looked from the outside. The flood swallowed the spell greedily. Then the spell unfolded inside it. Not fire. Not lightning. Not holy light. A cataloging spell. The weakest, most harmless library spell ever made. Its purpose was to sort books by topic. The flood froze. Every tooth in the water suddenly received a command. Identify category. The curse had eaten thousands of pages, dozens of restricted spells, fragments of royal records, demon fragments, founder warnings, and my blood. The cataloging spell looked at all of it and tried to place each piece on the correct shelf. The curse did not understand shelves. So the spell made shelves inside the curse. Invisible categories split the flood apart. Historical records to the left. Forbidden rituals to the right. Demonic appetite under restricted threats. Chewed paper under damaged materials. Teeth under biological hazards. Black water convulsed as the harmless little spell organized it to death. I shoved my bleeding hand deeper. The drain rune opened. The archive floor became a whirlpool of silver light. Now the curse had been divided into categories, and the drain could finally pull each category away. The flood screamed louder. Its face stretched toward me. You cannot drown the sea. I leaned closer, smiling through clenched teeth. I do not need to drown the sea. I only need to label it wrong. Then I changed one category. Demonic appetite became spilled ink. Drain rune, very offended by spilled ink in a restricted archive, activated at full power. Silver chains erupted from the floor and wrapped around the flood. The teeth snapped, the mouths cursed, the eye tried to retreat through the ripple it had entered from. I grabbed that ripple with my bare hand. For a heartbeat, my vision vanished. I was no longer in the archive. I was standing above an endless black ocean under a moon that looked like an open wound. Far away, beneath the waves, something enormous was curled around a tower made of shipwrecks. The second seed. It had no body yet. Only hunger. But it was already dreaming. And in that dream, I saw ships sinking before they were built, cities drowning before their foundations were laid, and thousands of people kneeling on beaches while black water crawled into their mouths. Then the eye beneath the sea turned toward me. It saw me clearly. Not the boy bodies. Not the academy robe. The future Archmage who had killed it once in another age. The ocean whispered my name. Not Arlen's. My old title. The title the future had carved into fear. World Breaker. My stomach dropped. No one in this era should know that name. No one. The archive snapped back around me. The black flood was being dragged into the drain, but one thin stream had escaped. It crawled along the ceiling, silent and fast, heading straight for Iris. Of course, it had realized she was politically dangerous. Killing me would be satisfying. Killing Iris would be useful. I threw a wind blade, but the stream split around it. Grant was too far away. Ava was still holding her barrier. Rowan had no attack spell ready. Iris saw the water coming, but she had nowhere to move. So I cheated. I used a spell I hated. Future Step. Not time travel. I was not stupid enough to tear another hole in history while standing inside a demon flood. Future Step only borrowed the position my body would occupy 1 second later and dragged it into the present. The cost was simple. My muscles paid the debt. I vanished from the flood and appeared between Iris and the black stream. Every bone in my legs felt like it had been turned into hot wire. The stream punched through my shoulder. Not around it. Through it. Cold spread across my chest. The curse tried to crawl into my veins. Iris caught me before I fell. Her expression was calm, but her hands were shaking. "You are bleeding on me," she said. "You are welcome." The stream inside my shoulder opened its teeth. Ava saw it and went white. "Do not heal him yet," Rowan shouted suddenly. Everyone looked at him. He was staring at the ceiling, eyes moving fast. The water is linked to the Western Sea. If Ava heals him while the link is active, the curse may use her mana as a bridge. I wanted to laugh. Rowan was learning. That was inconvenient, because now he was smart enough to stop me from doing reckless things quietly. "Correct," I said, "so we cut the bridge first." Grant landed beside us, soaked, furious, and holding half a broken shelf as a shield. How? I looked at the stream buried in my shoulder. It pulsed like a vein. I looked at the drain rune, still pulling the main flood under the floor. Then I looked at Iris. "I need your ring." Her eyes narrowed. "This ring controls emergency royal seals." "I know. It is worth more than this academy." "Then it should be sturdy." She held my gaze for 1 second, then pulled the ring off and dropped it into my bloody palm. No argument. That was why Iris was dangerous. She could complain later and act now. I pressed the ring against the black stream in my shoulder and whispered a royal command phrase I should not have known for another 900 years. Iris went very still. The ring flared blue. Royal seals were designed to lock doors, vaults, treaties, execution orders, and in one hilarious scandal I remembered from the future, an entire duke inside his own bathroom. A seal was a seal. It did not care what it closed. I closed the wound from the outside, trapping the black stream inside a tiny prison of royal authority. Then I used the fake librarian title to classify that prison as overdue property. The archive reacted instantly. A silver chain shot from the floor, hooked the sealed stream, and yanked it out of my shoulder. I screamed. Just a little. A dignified amount. The chain dragged the stream into the drain, and the last of the black water vanished beneath the stone. Silence crashed over the archive. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then every remaining book slammed shut at once. A tiny receipt floated down from the ceiling and landed in my hand. It said I owed the archive 412 replacement pages, 1 shelf, 3 chains, and a formal apology. I burned it. The archive immediately printed another receipt. I handed that one to Rowan. "You like studying." He looked at the receipt like I had handed him a cursed baby. Before he could respond, Ava reached me. Her healing light wrapped around my shoulder, gentle at first, then sharper as she searched for leftover corruption. I expected a lecture. I deserved one. Instead, she whispered, "You knew that name." The room went quiet again. Of course she had heard it. Ava's healing magic was connected to my body when the sea whispered through the wound. She had not heard the word with her ears. She had felt it through my blood. World Breaker. Grant's eyes shifted toward me. Rowan stopped breathing. Iris watched my face like she was reading a treaty with a hidden knife inside it. I could lie. I was very good at lying. But lies were like cheap bridges, useful, fast, and deadly when too many people stood on them. I gave them a piece of the truth. Where I come from, I said, people gave me ugly names. Grant's jaw tightened. Where you come from? I smiled faintly. A place that does not exist yet. That was not enough. It was also too much. The four of them stared at me, each reacting differently. Grant looked betrayed, like he had been fighting beside a ghost. Ava looked hurt, like she had already guessed I was hiding something and hated being right. Rowan looked like his brain had found a locked door and was politely preparing explosives. Iris looked satisfied. That annoyed me most. You suspected, I said. I suspected several impossible things, Iris replied. I am pleased one of them was correct. Before Grant could demand answers, the tablet on the stone pedestal cracked again. The map returned. The western sea glowed brighter than before. But now 5 smaller sparks appeared around it. Not gates. Servants. The second seed was awake enough to move pieces. One spark traveled across the ocean toward the coast. One moved beneath the royal road. One appeared inside the capital. One flickered under Grayvale. And one appeared right beside us. I looked down. The floor beneath Rowan's feet rippled. A black drop rose from the stone behind him, silent as a thought. I moved before anyone else noticed. My legs nearly failed, but I forced mana through the pain and threw the nearest object. Not a knife. Not a spell. The receipt. The tiny paper slapped onto the black drop. The archive, still furious about unpaid damages, recognized its own document and classified the drop as part of the debt. Silver chains burst from the floor and wrapped around it. The drop squealed like a boiling rat. Rowan jumped away. Grant stared at the trapped thing. Was that an assassin? No, I said, a messenger. The drop stretched inside the chains and formed a tiny mouth. It spoke with the Say's voice. Come west, Worldbreaker, bring your little candles. The tide wants to taste them. Ava's healing light flickered. Iris's expression sharpened. Grant raised his sword. Rowan leaned closer, because apparently fear and curiosity were fighting inside him, and curiosity was winning by a disgusting amount. I crouched in front of the chained drop. You are bad at invitations, I said. The mouth smiled. The first seed died screaming. The second seed learns from screams. Good, I said, then I will give it an education. I touched the chain. The drop expected torture, interrogation, maybe holy fire. Instead, I fed it one memory. A fake one. In the memory, I was weaker than I was, afraid, desperate. My mana channels were cracked beyond repair. My allies hated me. The king doubted me. Grayvale was defenseless. The capital was divided. The western sea could lure me into a trap, and I would stumble straight into it because I had no other choice. The drop drank the lie greedily. Then I let it escape. Grant grabbed my arm. You let it go. I let it report. To the enemy. Yes, that seems bad. It would be bad if I told it the truth. The drop slipped into the floor and vanished toward the western sea, carrying a beautiful lie wrapped in panic. I stood slowly, pretending my shoulder was not still burning. The others watched me. This was the moment when a normal person would finally explain everything. The future, the demon emperor, the ruined world, the graves, the mistakes, the fact that every victory I had stolen so far was just a finger plugging a hole in a collapsing dam. But if I told them everything, I would change how they acted. If I changed how they acted, I might erase the few advantages I still had. So I gave them orders instead. Grant, you're going to train the academy guards until they stop standing like decorative furniture. He blinked. That is your explanation. Rowan, you are going to copy every surviving note about sea gates, drowned kingdoms, lunar tides, and old transportation arrays. Rowan adjusted his glasses with a hand that was still trembling. There may be thousands of pages. Then write faster. Ava, you are going to sleep for 6 hours, then prepare healing anchors that can work without direct mana contact. She frowned. You are telling me to sleep right after almost dying. Yes, I will do the almost dying for both of us. That is not comforting. Iris, I said, turning to her, you need to quietly take control of every harbor ledger in the kingdom. Her eyebrows lifted, quietly. Loudly causes assassins, quietly causes paperwork. I prefer enemies who have to file requests before stabbing me. For the first time since the flood, Iris smiled. Then the archive doors opened by themselves. Beyond them, the hallway was dark. Too dark. Grayvale's lamps should have been burning. Instead, the corridor stretched longer than it should have, bending into a tunnel that smelled like salt. A wet footprint appeared on the stone. Then another. Then another. Something invisible was walking toward us from very far away. The Western Sea had sent its messenger. And somewhere beneath the Western Sea, the second demon seed opened one eye.